Hey guys, tonight we step barefoot into the soft mud of a forgotten century, where the breeze carries the scent of old wood smoke and sweat-soaked canvas. You hear the distant shuffle of boots, the click of buttons, and the faint murmurs of history that never made it into textbooks. You're not just lying in bed anymore, you've time-traveled, and trust me, the pillows aren't getting any comfier from here on out. Tonight, we're taking a bold reality check. You're going to live through history like you were actually there. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive, so before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually like what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your city and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft humming sound, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You drag your feet through the crusty straw and step over what might be a sleeping goat. Welcome to a Roman outpost, 1st century AD. The night guard squints at you under the flickering torchlight. You're not in uniform. Awkward. Still, he waves you through. Maybe because you're already wearing sandals with socks. A bold move, timelessly offensive, you find yourself shivering not from the cold, but from the realization that toilets haven't been invented yet. Not proper ones, anyway. Just a trench. A stick, and a hopeful breeze. But don't worry. The latrina is communal. That means you'll be pooping shoulder to shoulder with 6 other strangers. Enjoy. Here's a hard truth, ancient Rome had no such thing as personal space. You share your sleeping quarters, your meals, your secrets, sometimes even your parasites. A single lice comb gets passed around like it's a cherished family heirloom. The concept of shampoo. Hilarious. Most people bathe once a week, if they're rich. You'll get a turn in the public bathhouse if you bribe the right guy. Or if someone else dies in line. Still, it's not all grime and gruel. Tonight's dinner is a bowl of lentils, olives, and something that tastes suspiciously like pigeon. It's heavily salted and slightly burnt. Culinary historians argue whether Romans actually enjoyed the food or just pretended to because everything tasted like amphora clay. Fact, the ancient Romans used fermented fish guts, garum, as their universal condiment. Fun twist. They put it on dessert. You'd think that's disgusting, and you're absolutely correct. Some scholars still debate whether garum was an acquired taste or a punishment. There are scrolls that describe entire warehouses filled with the pungent goo, guarded like treasure. The smell alone could end a marriage. And speaking of ending things, you try to fall asleep to the sounds of a guy coughing out a lung 2 mats over, the rhythmic snoring of a retired centurion, and one guy softly sobbing over the loss of his only sock. As your eyelids flutter, you realize, you've made it through a whole Roman day. You haven't been stabbed, enslaved, or trampled by a chariot. That's a win. Now dream gently, time traveler. Because tomorrow, you wake up in medieval France. And it only gets weirder from here. You wake up to the wet slap of cloth against stone, not your alarm. That hasn't been invented yet. It's your neighbor, scrubbing last night's stew from the communal cooking pots. You groan, roll over, and hit your head on a wooden beam. That's your medieval snooze button. You don't even have a mattress, just a burlap sack stuffed with straw, half of which has migrated to your tunic during the night. It's early morning in a French village, probably around the year 1287. The fire in the hearth went out hours ago, and the stone floor below is doing a great impression of a glacier. Your tunic smells like soup. Not good soup. Cabbage soup. The kind that's been boiled, reboiled, forgotten. Then boiled again. You think about pretending to be dead for a few more minutes, but your goat is already trying to chew on your hair. You swing your legs off the loft and hop down into the one-room cottage you share with your family, 2 chickens, and a troubling amount of mold. The chicken is already using your boot as a nesting box. You sigh, put it on anyway, and shuffle out into the fog. A pig is screaming somewhere nearby. You're not sure if it's being slaughtered or if it just woke up on the wrong side of the puddle. Either way, it's a normal morning soundtrack. Outside, your neighbor nods at you while pushing a cart loaded with root vegetables and something that might be a tax collector. He's face down in a pile of beets, snoring gently. Here's something they don't put in the tapestries: you're probably missing a few teeth. Not from a heroic sword fight or a plague. No, you lost them the honest medieval way, by chewing your daily bread. Which is essentially edible gravel. Grain is ground with stones, and over time, tiny flecks chip off into the flour. Your molars. Ground down like ancient millstones. But hey, at least it's high in fiber. You scratch at your neck. It's not paranoia. It's lice. Everyone has lice. Children name theirs. Nobles wear wigs to hide them. You just hope yours aren't organizing your job. You're the Reeves assistant. A Reeve is like a local enforcer / bureaucrat / punching bag. He's the guy the villagers yell at when taxes go up or the barley yield drops, and you're the guy who stands next to him and absorbs that yelling like a human sponge in a tunic. The Reeve sends you off to the village green to check for vandalism and gossip. It's a big day, a royal inspector is coming. Everyone's pretending to be sober. Someone is hurriedly washing their shirt in the well. Someone else painted a flower on the town water pump. Which is probably illegal but weirdly cheerful. The inspector arrives on horseback. His cloak is too clean. He's got that, just bathed this season energy. And of course, he speaks Latin. Badly. He says, Dominus vobiscum with the confidence of someone who failed priest school twice and still thinks it means do not steal the goats. You nod sagely like you totally understand, while mentally translating it into, smile and don't get arrested. Historical fact, Latin was still the language of church and officialdom, but most peasants spoke regional dialects. Miscommunication between inspectors and villagers was common and sometimes hilarious. You're supposed to escort the inspector through the village, pointing out things like grain storage, pig pens, and other exciting landmarks. You smile and nod while he grimaces at everything. He asks about sanitation. You don't know the word, so you point at the ditch where everyone goes to the bathroom and shrug. Fun fact, cleanliness wasn't top priority. Baths happened once or twice a year, and people believed too much washing could open the pores to disease. Some even thought water carried evil spirits. So, smelling like cabbage and goats. That was just your vibe. You wash your hands in the river anyway. An old woman shrieks at you for cursing the fish. She spits 3 times, mutters something about frogs raining from the sky, and wanders off. Lunchtime arrives. If you can call it that. A communal fire boils something gray in a pot. You're handed a bowl, barley mash, turnip chunks, and something that might once have had feathers. You poke it with a stick. It pokes back. Delicious. You choke it down with help from ale that tastes like sour bread soaked in wood. The bread itself? Still gritty. Still chewing rocks. You're about to help with sheep shearing when a juggler arrives. Real excitement. He's missing 2 fingers, but he's got flaming sticks and a loud hat. So you gather with the rest of the village. He juggles, rhymes, burps the alphabet in Occitan, and for 5 glorious minutes, the entire crowd forgets that life is mostly taxes, threshing, and mild starvation. Someone tries to pay him with a chicken. The juggler shrugs and accepts. That chicken will be his bedmate tonight. Or dinner. Possibly both. As the sun begins to set, you head back to your loft. Above the goat pen. The hay is damp. Your boots are soggy. A spider the size of a coin watches you from the rafters with 8 quiet, judgmental eyes. You lie down and stare at the wooden ceiling. You scratch your lice. You pat your stomach, mildly grateful you didn't get food poisoning today. Outside, someone is singing. Inside, a mouse steals your last crumb of bread. You let it. Honestly, he probably needs it more. You close your eyes. Tomorrow brings more yelling, more barley, and if you're lucky, a jug of ale that wasn't brewed in a thunderstorm. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes, carried on the creaking of beams, the rustle of straw, and the distant muttering of your neighbor arguing with a goat. As your eyes close, you think, could be worse. Spoiler, it's about to be worse. A week ago, the Baron's son decided to host a tournament. Not a proper jousting affair, nobody around here owns a horse that isn't also a cart puller or a walking dinner, but more of a who can throw this rock the farthest without collapsing sort of thing. You still have bruises on your shoulder from the log lifting contest. The prize was a turnip and half a kiss from the innkeeper's daughter, who has only 3 visible teeth and a laugh that sounds like falling cutlery. You lost, of course. Not because you were weak, but because the miller's boy greased his arms with lard and pretended it gave him strength. No one argued. He smells like pork and success, but that's not what's going to make today worse. No, today is the day the tithing man does his rounds. And you're behind. Again, your contribution to the church this quarter was technically supposed to be a sack of grain. Technically, you brought a sack filled with rocks and a little flour dust. You're hoping no one checks too closely, or that the tithing man is blind in the soul as well as in the eye. Rumor has it he's already accused 3 families of heresy just this month, including poor old Gomet who merely sneezed during a sermon in Sedao. The priest claimed she was speaking in tongues. She claimed she stepped on a thorn. No one's quite sure who to believe, and both were dunked in the river just to be safe. You spot the tithing man's hat before you see the man. It's a ridiculous thing, feathers, a badge, some bits of dried herbs stuck into the brim like he's half sheriff, half soup. He walks with the pomp of someone who hasn't done real labor since he dropped a spoon in a butter churn and called it divine punishment. You duck into the smithy, pretending to admire a bent horseshoe. The blacksmith, a burly man named Claude who sweats louder than most people speak, gives you a side eye. You hiding again? He grunts, you nod. Tithing man. Claude snorts, spits in the fire, and hands you a lump of iron. Look busy. So you hammer. Not well. Not effectively. But loudly, it works, until the tithing man pokes his nose through the doorway. You. He bellows, as if shouting can make up for poor eyesight. You freeze mid-hammer. Me? Yes, you. Reeves' assistant. You've underpaid. Again. You shrug, dusting off imaginary soot. Maybe. But I prayed twice yesterday. That counts, right? He doesn't laugh. Of course he doesn't. His idea of humor is watching people flinch when he quotes scripture incorrectly and dares them to correct him. You spend the next half hour listening to a rant about moral obligation, community responsibility, and the wages of sin, which you're fairly certain are lower than your actual wages. In the end, you promise to deliver a proper tithe by week's end. Or else. He doesn't say what the or else is. You assume it involves dunking, branding, or additional cabbage. By the time you escape, your ears are ringing and your stomach is growling. You head toward the baker's stall. Not because you have money, but because you're hoping to breathe deeply and absorb calories through osmosis. The baker, old Mathilde, eyes you suspiciously. You buying or sniffing? You raise both hands in surrender. Just enjoying the air. Air costs extra. You nod solemnly and walk on, hunger gnawing like a particularly opinionated squirrel. Maybe you'll find a berry bush. Maybe you'll gnaw on tree bark. Maybe you'll finally resort to eating the chunk of dried something that's been in your pocket since the solstice festival. No one knows what it is. Could be meat. Could be a very old figure. Could be part of someone's shoe. On the way back to the cottage, you pass the tailor's hut. She's yelling at her son for stitching a sleeve onto the bottom of a tunic. Again. You catch a snippet of their argument. I told you, sleeves go on arms. But that's where his arms were yesterday. You don't even question it. Medieval fashion is mostly about hiding lice and pretending seams are deliberate. At home, the goat has chewed half your doorframe. The chickens are in your bed again. And your youngest sibling, currently covered in something green and frothy, is claiming to have invented soap by accident. You eye the puddle of fizz with suspicion. It smells like mint and vinegar. I mixed herbs and mud, he explains proudly. It burned my hand, then smelled nice. So I think it's holy. You decide to bless it later, just in case. The afternoon drifts by in the usual rhythm, chores, muttering, stepping over puddles that may or may not be pee. You try to fix the roof with some reeds and good intentions. You fail. Rain is expected tonight, and so are leaks. You contemplate flipping the bed upside down and sleeping underneath it like a particularly stubborn onion. Evening comes with more stew. Same stew. It never really ends, just gets reborn like a culinary phoenix made of water and regret. At the communal fire, gossip is the only currency. You learn that Marjorie might be pregnant, that the priest saw a comet. And that someone carved the bishop has stinky feet into the side of the latrine. No one admits it. Everyone suspects the miller's boy. He grins and says nothing. The reeve joins you briefly. He's tired. He smells like accounts and boiled turnips. Inspector liked your attitude, he mutters. You blink. He did. Said you were quiet. And smelled local. You decide to take that as a compliment, then someone starts singing. A ballad about a cow that ran away with a monk. It's off-key, lewd, and probably heresy. Everyone joins in by verse 2, the fire crackles. The stars come out. You lie back on the cold ground and stare at them, wondering if somewhere, someone else is also scratching lice, swatting goats, and dodging taxes. Probably. Misery loves company, and the 13th century is one big group hug of hardship. Your eyes drift closed. Again, could be worse. Thunder rumbles, and it will be worse. You awaken to a chill in the air and a distinct smell of wood smoke and burning horsehair. Welcome to a Viking encampment. It's around the year 875 AD, and your head hurts because someone greeted you with a celebratory slap on the back of your skull. You're part of a raiding party now, don't ask how. One moment you were dreaming about turnip stew, the next you're in furs, holding a dull axe, and someone's yelling skull. Breakfast is dried fish, hard bread, and fermented goat's milk that tastes like rage. You gag. A nearby warrior sees this and laughs, calling you fish baby. You respond with a proud nod. You don't want to fight before sunrise. Let's be clear, Viking life isn't all ships and sagas. Most days are spent fixing nets, arguing about cows, or recovering from wounds you pretended weren't fatal. You're already limping because your boots are made of recycled sadness and string. Today, you're helping repair a longship. This means hammering wooden planks while pretending you understand how boats float. A man named Tor gives you advice in Old Norse. You don't understand a word, but nod enthusiastically and drive a nail into your thumb. Historical fact, Viking helmets did not have horns. That's a modern myth, likely created by 19th century opera costume designers who thought, what if war? But stylish? Historians are still debating whether Vikings cared more about grooming than pillaging. Combs and tweezers have been found in burial sites. So yes, Tor might stab you, but he'll do it with a well-groomed beard. You're invited to a small feast at dusk. Which means, stale bread, dried meats, some berries, and a suspiciously pink stew. Everyone is shouting over each other, boasting about battles you suspect never happened. One man claims to have slain a bear with his toenail. No one questions it. A skald, Viking poet, begins chanting a saga. You don't understand most of it, but every now and then your name is mentioned, and everyone laughs. You assume it's a compliment. You hope, then, the storytelling takes a darker turn. Someone mentions a vision, an omen. A raven seen flying backward. Everyone goes quiet. You wonder if it's superstition or an excuse to get out of tomorrow's rowing shift. Before sleep, you're handed a knife. Just in case. The tent flap rustles, and you swear you hear something breathing outside. Could be a wolf. Could be Sven, the guy who likes pranks. Either way, you clutch the knife and whisper a prayer to any god that's listening, and just as you start drifting off, you hear a soft, solemn fart. Everyone pretends it didn't happen. You smile, Viking life, baby. By the time the sky begins to lighten, casting the fjord in shades of cold silver, you're already ankle-deep in seaweed and regret. Morning duties in the Viking encampment don't start with a rooster's crow, they start with Bjorn yelling directly into your ear because you slept through the first horn call. You scramble up, half covered in fur and mud, clutching your knife like a toddler clinging to a bedtime toy. Today's assignment: gutting fish. Not fighting dragons. Not pillaging. Just fish. Hundreds of them. The catch came last night, nets bursting with wriggling silver, and now it's your turn to be elbow-deep in scales. Cold blood, and the indescribable scent of things that once dreamed of the ocean but now belong in someone's breakfast. A seagull eyes you with the arrogance of a god. You throw a fish head at it. It dodges with ease. It judges you harder. You sit beside two others, Leaf, who's missing 3 fingers and insists it's from wrestling a sea serpent, and Astrid, who doesn't speak much but has guts like a woman possessed. You attempt small talk, but Leaf just belches and mumbles something about destiny. Astrid offers you a fish liver. It's unclear if that's kindness or a test. You accept it solemnly and eat it. Your stomach whimpers. You feel like you've disappointed your ancestors and your intestines simultaneously. After breakfast, which, unfortunately, was also fish, the warriors gather near the longship again. The air is thick with wood tar and testosterone. Today's task is sail mending, an act of brutal patience. You're expected to stitch thick woolen panels using bone needles, all while pretending this is a glorious contribution to the Viking legacy. You stab yourself 3 times. At one point, your thread tangles into a knotted lump the size of your dignity. No one mocks you. That's worse. They've accepted your incompetence. You are now the sewing one. Meanwhile, a group of boys are practicing with wooden swords nearby. The noise is a mixture of war cries and pubescent cracking voices. One child attempts a dramatic roll and lands directly in a campfire. He emerges howling, only slightly singed, and is immediately cheered by the others. You make a note: Viking education is basically trial by flame and flailing. Suddenly, a horn blows, a deep, resonant sound that vibrates your ribs. Everyone stiffens. The chieftain is arriving. He comes striding across the camp like a storm cloud made of muscle and history. His beard is braided with tiny bones, probably decorative, hopefully not from relatives, and he wears a cloak dyed a shade of red so violent it might be outlawed in other centuries. He says nothing. Just scan the camp. His eyes land on you, you bow. Deeply. Possibly too deeply, you lose your balance and tumble forward into the sailcloth. The chieftain snorts. Not a laugh. A snort. But that's basically applause in Viking terms. After his inspection, the chieftain calls a meeting. You all gather in a semicircle around the fire pit. Someone throws a handful of herbs onto the flames, and the air smells like mint, ash, and potential hallucination. Tor, the one who speaks mostly in grunts, announces that there's talk of a raid. Not a big one, just a small test the waters and burn a few huts kind of raid. Spirits lift. Weapons are checked. Axes gleam with renewed enthusiasm. Someone sharpens their blade on their teeth. You hope it's metaphorical. It isn't, but before any raiding, there's training, which means you get to run through the woods wearing a helmet that's slightly too large, chasing a burlap sack full of rocks that's been tied to a rope and dragged behind a horse. This is supposed to simulate prey. You fall 6 times. On the 7th, you collide with a low-hanging branch and see your ancestors briefly. They look disappointed. Back at camp, a healer takes a look at the lump on your forehead. He offers you a salve made from moss and blessed spit. You accept. At this point, anything that doesn't taste like fish is a win. Evening brings another feast, this time with marginally better stew. It still contains mystery meat, but the berries haven't fermented into wine-flavored horror yet. You're seated beside Runa, who's carving runes into a boar's tusk. She tells you it's for luck. You ask if it's working. She holds up her hand to reveal only 4 fingers and shrugs. Some days. The skald returns, voice hoarse but determined. He launches into a saga about a warrior who killed a kraken with nothing but a bone comb and sheer spite. The crowd cheers. You suspect the story has been improved over time, but you're not about to argue with the only man in camp who can rhyme blood with mud 12 different ways. Just when things settle into the usual rhythm of stew slurping and casual yelling, a scout bursts in, face wild with wind and worry. He announces that another raiding party has gone missing. They were supposed to be back yesterday. No sign. No smoke from their fires. Just an eerie silence from across the water. Immediately, the mood shifts. The chieftain stands, and the firelight dances on his face like flickering omens. A decision is made. Your camp will send a search party at dawn. Guess who's volunteered? Yep, you. Night is tense. The usual fart chorus is absent. Everyone sharpens weapons in quiet determination. Even the goat seems anxious. You sit outside your tent, blade on your lap, watching the aurora swirl faintly above the fjord like the gods themselves are whispering rumors. You wonder what lies across the water. Enemy warriors. Bad weather. A very angry kraken with unresolved emotional trauma. You sleep in fits and starts, dreamless except for the occasional sensation of falling into fish barrels. At dawn, the longship creaks into motion. You row, badly. Tor corrects your rhythm by shouting insults every 3 seconds. At one point, he just sings your name to the tune of a funeral dirge. You're honored. Maybe. The fog is thick. The sea slaps at the hull like a sulking giant. You arrive at the shore around mid-morning, greeted by silence and seagulls. The camp you find is wrong, tents torn. Fires long cold. Weapons scattered like fallen thoughts. No bodies. No blood. Just absence. And the overwhelming sense that something watched you arrive. Tor raises a hand, motioning for quiet. You hear it too, just faint, but there, breathing. Ragged. Wet. It's coming from the chieftain's tent. You approach. Slowly. Axe drawn. Heart galloping. Inside, crouched near the remains of a stew pot, is a figure. Barefoot. Eyes wide. Clothes shredded. It's one of the missing warriors. He's clutching something, hard to see in the dim light. You lean in. It's a fish, alive. Possibly smug. He whispers one word, drowned. You try to ask more, but he's gone. Not dead, just collapsed. Exhausted. Asleep. Or both. The search party gathers the survivor, checks for signs of battle. There are none. But there are tracks. Deep, odd grooves in the earth. Like something slithered, you head back with more questions than answers. That night, back at camp, there's tension in every corner. The skald sings nothing. The stew simmers uneaten. Even the goat keeps its distance from the fire. You try to sleep, but something itches at your thoughts. Not lice this time, just unease. Tor sits beside you and mutters, sometimes, the sea takes what it wants. Not ships. Not men. Names. You don't know what that means, but when you wake the next morning, someone's gone, no footprints. No screams. Just an empty bedroll and a single, perfect fish scale left behind, and far out in the fjord. Bubbles. You wake up to the sound of a bell and the smell of ink. You're in a monastery now, probably somewhere in England, maybe France. The year? Let's call it 1123. You're a novice monk, and your job today is to copy manuscripts until your hand cramps into a prehistoric claw. Fun, you stretch, yawn, and promptly get shushed by Brother Oswin, who takes his vow of silence very seriously, except when he's yelling at you to be quiet. Breakfast is cold porridge, a piece of bread, and something that looks like yesterday's regret. There's no talking at meals. Just chewing. Lots and lots of chewing. You try to communicate your displeasure with a well-timed sigh. Oswin glares at you. Again, the scriptorium is cold. You huddle over your parchment and begin copying Latin phrases you don't understand, trying not to smear the ink with your sleeve. Every 20 minutes, someone coughs in a way that sounds like despair. One monk passes gas and pretends it's spiritual. Historical fact, monks preserved much of the classical world's knowledge. Without them, we wouldn't have Aristotle, Euclid, or that one medieval cookbook with a recipe for hedgehog stew. Yes, hedgehog. Roasted, then redressed in its own spines. Yum, but let's talk about boredom. Real, soul-grinding, spine-warping boredom. Being a medieval scribe wasn't glamorous, it was RSI in slow motion. Some manuscripts have marginalia where monks wrote things like, "This parchment is bad, oh, my hand, and the ink is thin." A medieval version of passive-aggressive tweets, "Lunch is more bread. Always more bread." You ask if you can go to the garden. Oswin writes "No" on a piece of slate and slides it across the table. You hate Oswin. This evening, you're attending Vespers. It's peaceful. The chanting echoes through stone halls. Candles flicker like sleepy stars. For a moment, you almost feel serene. Almost. Until you realize your robe is caught in the bench and you can't stand up without mooning the abbot. You stay seated. Eternally, some scholars argue that monastic life was a path to enlightenment. Others believe it was just medieval introverts figuring out how to avoid war and marriage at the same time. Both sides have a point. Tonight, you sleep in a cell the size of a broom closet. The mattress is straw. The pillow is, also straw. Something moves under it. You pretend you didn't see that. You whisper a prayer, not out of piety but out of pure existential fatigue. Outside, an owl hoots. Inside, Brother Oswin snores like a falling tree. You think, maybe tomorrow I'll run away and become a knight. Spoiler, you won't, you don't become a knight. You wake up with straw in your ear and a crick in your neck that feels biblical. The bell tolls again. Lauds, the morning prayer, is calling. You haul yourself out of your straw coffin, bleary-eyed and slightly itchy from whatever shared your bed last night, and shuffle toward the chapel like a hungover ghost in brown robes. The corridors are stone, damp, and mildly resentful. Every footstep echoes like a question God never answered. The chapel is cold, because of course it is, and your breath fogs in front of your face as you take your place with the other brothers. Oswin is already there, glaring at you like you personally offended the Holy Trinity. You mouth an apology. He mouths a psalm. You lose, the chanting begins. It's beautiful, in that slow, sonorous way that makes you want to fall asleep standing up. The Latin rolls over you in waves, half remembered, half mumbled, all deeply sleepy. Your knees ache from the endless kneeling. Your mind wanders. You imagine what it would be like to just keep walking. Out the gate. Into the woods. To a tavern with ale and people who don't shush you with a death stare. But then you remember you've taken vows, sort of. And also, the last monk who tried to leave ended up being chased by a very determined goat and came back with a limp and a lecture. After prayers, it's straight to work. Not the glamorous night stuff you once dreamed of. No dragons, no damsels, no sword. Just, the scriptorium again. You slide onto your wooden bench and pick up your quill. Today you're working on a psalter. Or maybe it's a legal treatise. You honestly can't tell anymore. Everything is ink and Latin and abbreviations you suspect even God doesn't fully understand. Your hand is already starting to ache, and you're only 5 lines in. A fly lands on your page. You flick it. It returns. It's personal now. Brother Cuthbert coughs beside you, a long, rattling wheeze that ends in something wet. You scoot your stool a few inches away. Cuthbert looks like he died 3 weeks ago and hasn't noticed yet. Time passes slowly in the scriptorium. You take tiny, unauthorized breaks to doodle in the margins, nothing heretical. Just a cat playing a lute. A bishop fighting a snail. A dragon with suspiciously Oswin-like features eating too much bread. You feel better afterward. Almost human. At noon, the bell tolls again, sext. Midday prayer. You rise, stretch, wince at the crack in your spine, and join the slow procession back to the chapel. The chanting is a blur. Your eyes close. Your body sways. Oswin elbows you sharply in the ribs and mouths something that's probably not printable. Then it's lunch, cold leeks, colder bread, and tepid water. No meat. That's reserved for feast days and people with gout. Brother Elric once faked gout just to get salted fish. He was caught and had to copy out the Book of Job as penance. You still hear him muttering about boils in his sleep. After lunch, you ask again if you can work in the garden today. Oswin hands you a small slate with a new message carved into it: sins rot faster in silence. You stare at it. You stare at him. You decide to try again next week. Back in the scriptorium, you try not to cry. Or sneeze. You have allergies. Not to anything specific, just the concept of ancient dust. You sniffle quietly. The ink smudges anyway. You whisper an apology to Saint Jerome, whose name you've just accidentally spelled Jerwine. More time passes. You're not sure how much. Maybe days. Maybe eternity. Your knuckles are permanently ink-stained. Your robe smells like glue and despair. You pause to admire Brother Adelard's illumination work. He's drawing an angel with peacock feathers and golden toenails. You feel both inspired and vaguely inadequate. Oswin passes by and glances at your work. He raises an eyebrow. You don't know if that's a compliment or a warning. By late afternoon, you're allowed a brief walk in the cloister. The sunlight is filtered through stained glass and actual clouds. The grass is damp, the air fresh, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel like maybe monastic life isn't so bad. Then a goose bites you. Back to the chapel, vespers. You're kneeling again. More chanting. More aching. You begin to suspect the afterlife is just an endless loop of prayer and bruised knees. Supper is served, more bread. Some broth with floating vegetable fragments, and one glorious sliver of hard cheese. You savor it like it's a king's ransom. Oswin catches you smiling and writes pride is the root of all evil on his slate. You fantasize about throwing it into the latrine. Evening chores involve cleaning the scriptorium. Someone spilled ink. Someone else spilled themselves. You help mop and sweep, and try to hide the fact that your back is making noises like a medieval cart. After chores, you sneak a moment in the library. You're not supposed to read recreationally, but there's a hidden joy in curling up with a text you're not required to copy. Tonight it's a bestiary. You giggle softly at the entry for beavers, which claims they bite off their own testicles to escape hunters. You wonder what sort of trauma led to that conclusion. Brother Elric joins you. He's smuggled a plum. A plum. Where did he get it? He won't say. You both eat in silence, like revolutionaries. Then, Compline, the final prayer service of the day. The room glows with candlelight. The air is thick with incense and exhaustion. The chanting is slow and gentle. You let your mind drift. You think of the outside world. Nights in iron. Markets full of shouting and color. Ale. Cheese with spices. Warm baths. Horses. Women. Sunlight. Dancing, but then you remember, out there is also mud, plague, war, taxes, and people who don't appreciate your artistic snail drawings. You return to your cell, crawl into your straw bed, and try to scratch without waking the straw mites. You sleep. You dream you're a saint. You're being canonized for inventing a way to copy manuscripts without using your hands. In the dream, a floating quill dances across parchment, singing Gregorian chants. Oswin appears, glowering, and you wake up gasping, another day. Another bell, but today. Something's different. A letter arrives. A real one. Sealed with wax and smelling faintly of lavender and goat. The abbot reads it aloud to the brothers during morning gathering. It's from a distant nobleman, commissioning a copy of a psalter for his new chapel. He's sending funds. Gold. Supplies. Even meat. You all gasp. The abbot names you as one of the scribes for the commission. Oswin's face twitches. Just slightly. You savor it. The next few weeks are strange and glorious. You work on parchment so smooth it feels like sin. The ink is thick and dark. The pigments are imported, lapis for blue, vermilion for red. Real gold leaf. Your hand still cramps, but now it's with purpose. You draw angels. Lions. Vine work so delicate it looks like wind made visible. The noble's name appears in gilded script. For once, even Oswin doesn't correct you. Visitors come to admire the work. Nobles. Priests. A merchant who brings candied almonds you're definitely not supposed to eat. You eat them anyway. You catch the abbot smiling. That's rare. You wonder if he's proud, or just imagining all the mutton he can now afford. On the final day of the project, the noble himself arrives. He's shorter than you expected. Rounder. Smells like cloves. But he praises the manuscript, offers blessings, and, unbelievably, invites one of the monks to travel back with him. To assist in the noble's court as a scribe. Everyone holds their breath. He picks you. Oswin's quill snaps in half. You pack your things. A small satchel. A half-finished drawing of a rabbit dancing with death. A tiny bottle of stolen ink. The next morning, you walk through the monastery gates, heart pounding, eyes wide. You're still in robes. But you're not just a monk anymore. You're a scribe with a patron, and, if nothing else, a pocketful of almonds. You wake up and you're already sweating. It's not even sunrise, but the desert is warm, and the linen wrapped around your body feels like someone rolled you in a bread oven. Welcome to ancient Egypt, let's say 1340 BCE, give or take a few years, and you're about to help paint a tomb. Not just any tomb. A royal one. For someone important. Someone whose name you're not allowed to say out loud because, well, curses. You shuffle out of the workers' village, rubbing your eyes, stepping over stray dogs and sleeping kids, and immediately regret stepping in what may or may not be a goat's gift. Breakfast is barley bread dipped in beer, not the fizzy kind. Ancient Egyptian beer is more like warm, grainy porridge in liquid form. It tastes like despair and breakfast at the same time, your coworkers are already arguing about pigments. Someone forgot the lapis lazuli. Again. That stuff comes all the way from Afghanistan, yeah, that far, and you're not about to walk there to get more. You grab your brush, made from dried reeds, and try not to breathe too deeply. The last time you did, you inhaled so much ochre dust you sneezed like a plague victim for 3 days. Today, your task is painting Anubis, the jackal god of the dead. You've painted him so many times that you now dream about him showing up to collect taxes. Which would honestly track with your luck. Here's a historical fact: the tombs were painted in the dark. Or, to be more precise, with the help of shiny bronze mirrors reflecting sunlight through tunnels and doorways. Not exactly stadium lighting. So yes, you are painting sacred gods while half-blind, in 42 degrees Celsius heat, while someone behind you eats onions loudly. You take a break at noon. Everyone's under shade cloths made of papyrus and frustration. Someone is telling a joke about RA and a hippopotamus. You don't get it, but you laugh anyway. Better than having them turn on you. Fun historical tidbit: the average Egyptian wasn't buried in a pyramid. Those were just for kings and the very, very rich. You'll be lucky to get wrapped in a mat and shoved into the desert with a prayer and half a fish. But hey, at least they'll paint your name somewhere. Maybe. If you bribe the right person with dates and goat cheese, back on the scaffolding, a bee decides you look suspicious and starts buzzing near your ear. You try to remain calm, because panicking on a ladder with wet blue pigment is how you ruin both art and your career. Nearby, a priest is performing a blessing. He's chanting about eternal life while picking his nose. Spiritual hygiene was apparently a separate discipline. Scholars still debate whether tomb workers were treated well. Some argue they were fed and paid regularly, with housing and even medical care. Others say they were glorified slaves with slightly better sandals. Truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in the sand-covered middle. Around late afternoon, a guard passes by offering lotus water. It's cool and faintly floral. You sip it and immediately spill it on your tunic. So now you smell like onion beer and funeral flowers. Excellent. The sun starts to dip, and the light inside the tomb flickers gold. Your painting looks decent. Not divine, but respectable. Maybe, just maybe, it'll earn you a mention in some scribe's dusty scroll. Then someone sneezes directly onto your freshly painted falcon. You try not to cry. You really do. Evening arrives, and you stumble back to your quarters. Dinner is lentils, leeks, and bread again. Always bread. The teeth of most workers are worn flat from years of chewing grit-filled loaves. You've already cracked 2 molars. You dream of dates and honey, the treats reserved for priests and high officials. As you lie down on your mat, you stare at the ceiling and wonder, will anyone remember me? Will the gods know I painted their faces with love? And a slightly wobbly hand, somewhere outside, a jackal howls. You pull your linen tighter and whisper a prayer to Thoth, god of writing, just in case he's listening. Tomorrow, you paint again, or maybe the tomb collapses. Either way, you'll be back here by sunrise. By the time the stars fade and the first hint of gray appears on the horizon, you're already sitting up. Your back cracks like pottery. Your knees creak. You feel 35, but you're probably 20. Hard to say, people here don't age so much as weather. The linen you wrapped around your body last night now clings to you like a clingy ghost. You peel it off, stretch your arms, and start the slow shuffle toward the communal water trough, where 4 other workers are already splashing their faces and muttering half-awake curses. You join them, ignoring the cold slap of water and the distinct smell of unwashed humanity that lingers no matter how often you rinse. One of them, Hui, jokes that you look like a mummy that overslept. You splash him. He calls you brush boy, and you grin because, in a strange way, that's affection. Breakfast, again, is beer porridge. You don't even make a face anymore. It's like chewing regret. Some say it makes you strong. Others say it just makes you slow. You don't say anything. Your mouth is full. And your spirit hasn't caught up to your body yet. The foreman yells for the painters to gather. Today's schedule: detail work in the outer chamber. You'll be outlining Ra's solar bark, his celestial ship, as it glides across the heavens. Again. You've drawn more boats in your life than actual boats exist. The gods have more ships than sailors. The tomb isn't just a resting place. It's a sacred machine. A metaphysical launch pad. Everything painted, every falcon, star, symbol, isn't just decoration. It's function. If you mess up the proportions on a solar disk or forget to add a determinative glyph, someone's soul might get lost in the do-it and spend eternity being judged by crocodile demons. So, no pressure, you arrive at the worksite and clamber up a wooden scaffold. The air inside is already stifling. The mirrors haven't been adjusted yet, so the only light is a faint orange glow bouncing off the walls. You squint, squatting on a platform next to a boy holding a bronze mirror and constantly fidgeting. You want to tell him to hold it still, but he's the scribe's nephew. So instead, you mutter a blessing and begin outlining the bark in black ink. Below, someone sneezes. Again. You glance down. It's Penty, the apprentice gilder. His allergies are legendary. You're not mad, just wary. His sneezes travel like sandstorms. Around mid-morning, the master artisan, an older man named Menenhet, walks by. His hands are permanently stained red and blue. And his eyes could scold granite. He inspects your lines, squinting, then grunts, acceptable. That's high praise. You feel briefly immortal, then he turns to another worker who's painted an ibis with what can only be described as a melting face. Menenhet sighs so deeply you swear the limestone walls exhale. Osiris is not a goose, he mutters, before climbing down to correct the anatomy. The day wears on. You lose yourself in the rhythm, outline, pigment, breathe, don't smudge. You reach for red ochre and realize it's dried up. Again. You spit lightly into the dish to soften it. It's how things are done. Sacred art, blessed by spit, lunch is onion bread and dates, luxury. Someone must have bribed the foreman. You eat quickly under the shade, letting the date's sticky sweetness cling to your teeth. For a moment, you think of your mother. Her fingers stained with date syrup. Her voice, scolding you for chewing with your mouth open. She would have hated this job. Too much dust. Not enough gossip. By afternoon, the tomb grows hotter, as if the underworld itself is pressing against the stone. You pause to wring sweat from your linen tunic. Your hands shake slightly. You've been painting for hours, and your brushstrokes have started to blur. You climb down the scaffold for a break and nearly trip over a scarab beetle. You freeze. Everyone does. Scarabs are sacred, symbol of rebirth and the sun's eternal journey. One of the workers offers a tiny prayer. Another draws a protective symbol in the dust. The beetle scuttles away. You breathe again, then something strange happens. A crack appears in the wall, just a small one. Barely visible. But it wasn't there this morning. You call over the overseer. He squints, nods, and says it's nothing to worry about. But he orders a reinforcement beam brought in. Just in case, you go back to work, but the thought stays lodged in your chest like an errant splinter. Cracks mean instability. And instability, in a tomb, doesn't end in a polite memo. It ends in collapse. Dust. Buried alive. Or worse, angering the gods. Still, the work must go on. So you climb back up and begin adding stars to the ceiling of the next chamber. Tiny white dots against deep blue. Night skies for a king who will never see them. Another historical fact, painters sometimes sign their names in hidden places. A hieroglyph tucked beneath a sandal. A faint mark behind a god's ear. Not vanity, just hope. A way to whisper across centuries, I was here. I mattered. You consider adding your name today, but then you look down. The wall crack has widened, you alert the priest. He frowns, places both hands on the stone, murmurs a prayer to Ta, the creator god, and tells you to keep painting. The tomb must be finished, he says. The stars do not wait. So you keep going, dusk arrives, the mirrors are dim. The light flickers, warm and uncertain. You finish the final star and descend, legs shaking. Outside, the sun is bleeding gold across the desert. The workers file out one by one, brushing dust from their robes, laughing about some stupid joke involving ISIS and 3 broken jars. You linger. You stare at the tomb's entrance. At the scaffolding. At the crack, you wonder if it'll hold. Back in the village, dinner is lentils again. One of the women is weaving baskets by firelight. A child throws a stone at a goat. The goat stares at you like it knows your secrets. You sit down next to Hui, who's humming an old song. Something about fish and love and the moon. You don't remember the words. Just the feeling, think the tomb will hold. You ask, he shrugs. Everything cracks. Even the Nile dries. We build anyway. You lie awake that night. Unable to sleep, you think about the tomb, you think about the gods, you think about your name, you rise before dawn. Walk back to the tomb in silence, no one sees you, you climb the scaffold. Dip your brush in ink. And beneath the boat of RA, on the underside of one oar, you write your name, not big. Not proud, just enough, so that maybe, thousands of years from now, someone will find it, and know you lived, and tried. You're cold. Again, this time, it's not desert chill or monastic draft, this is battlefield fog. Mud. The kind that squelches when you step in it and tries to eat your shoes. Welcome to a World War I trench, somewhere along the Western Front. Probably France. Definitely miserable. The year is 1916. You're wearing a uniform that's too big in the shoulders and too tight in the boots. Someone said it was standard issue. You think that's code for it was lying around and you're lucky to have pants. Your bed is a dugout. Your mattress is dirt. And your pillow? That's your pack, which is also damp. Everything is damp. Even your thoughts, you crawl out just before dawn. The sky is gray. The walls are gray. Even the men around you look like they were painted by someone who ran out of color halfway through. Someone hands you a tin mug of tea that tastes like boiled socks and trench water. You say thank you anyway. Manners don't die, even here, breakfast is hardtack and tinned beef. Or, as everyone lovingly calls it, bully beef, which is not made from actual bullies, but definitely tastes like punishment. You chew it slowly, wondering if your jaw will give out before your hope does. The latrine is a plank suspended over a pit. You try not to look down. The guy before you left a copy of an old newspaper and a dented harmonica. You decide not to use either. Let's talk historical truth. Trench warfare was mostly boredom and fear, with brief interruptions of chaos. Hollywood gets it wrong, it wasn't all constant charging and explosions. It was waiting, itching, smelling, and trying to keep your socks dry enough so your toes wouldn't die before you did. You climb out of the trench to fetch rations and immediately sink ankle-deep in sludge. Your boots make a sound like soup being sucked through a straw. A nearby soldier laughs and says, "Don't worry, this part of France is all quicksand." You hope he's joking. You're not sure. A few yards away, someone is shaving. With a mirror nailed to a bayonet and soap made from army-issued sadness. He hums. The razor nicks him, but he shrugs. If the Hun don't get me, tetanus will. You wave politely. You both know your chances. Historical fact, soldiers tried to keep morale up through games, makeshift concerts, poetry, and something called trench newspapers. They'd publish jokes, sketches, even fake news articles poking fun at generals. One issue simply read, "Rain continues. Mud deepens. Socks lost." A classic. Back to you. You're on latrine duty today. That means emptying out buckets and refilling lime powder. It smells like the inside of a forgotten boot. Still, it's better than rat detail. The trench rats are big. Like, cat big. Some soldiers swear they saw one drag a full biscuit tin into a burrow. During your break, you write a letter home. You try to sound cheerful. You write, "I'm doing fine, Ma. The weather's been alright. Food's edible." Then you pause and wonder if a half-truth is still love. You decide it is. You seal the letter and hand it off to the guy who says he knows someone in signals. You don't ask questions. You don't have the energy. Then there's a whistle. Not the panic kind, just the kind that means mail, or sometimes soup. In this case, it's soup. Barley, bits of carrot, and a flavor you can only describe as hopeful glue. You eat it with your helmet upside down because your tin bowl was stolen by someone 3 nights ago. You haven't reported it. You respect the hustle. Scholars still argue over the psychology of trench warfare. Some claim it was the ultimate test of endurance. Others say it was institutional madness wrapped in bureaucracy and bad socks. Most agree it was. Complicated. Around sunset, the trench glows slightly with fading gold. Someone plays a harmonica. Another guy sings off-key. You join in because why not? The song is about home, but you suspect it's more metaphor than place. Before sleep, you clean your rifle. The ritual is familiar. You inspect the bolt, oil the barrel, check the stock. Not because you expect to fire it tonight, but because it gives your hands something to do besides shake. In your dugout, you lie back and listen. Muffled thuds in the distance. Rats scurrying above. A man whispering a prayer in French. Another softly crying, thinking no one hears. You do. You close your eyes and dream of soft grass. A sun that doesn't burn or hide. A room without mud, and, for once, boots that fit. A sharp whistle yanks you out of sleep, or something that tried to pass for it. It wasn't a dream so much as a looping reel of fog, cold, and an itch in your left sock that will outlive you. You sit up, boots already on because you never really took them off, and reach instinctively for your rifle. The whistle wasn't for soup this time. The sergeant's silhouette appears above the trench line like a poorly drawn gargoyle. He barks something about movement in no man's land. Might be Fritz probing, he says. Might be nothing. We're having a look either way. Lucky you, you join the patrol, a half-dozen ghosts with rifles and nerves stretched thinner than wire. Everyone moves like they've done this 100 times, because they have. You slosh through muck that pulls at your feet like it wants you to stay. Everything is gray. The fog. The dirt. The sky. The faces. There's no horizon anymore. Just degrees of wet. You clamber over the trench edge, crouching low, fingers curled around your Lee Enfield. There's a rhythm to this, like a cursed waltz. Step. Pause. Listen. Breathe through your mouth. Step again. You keep your eyes peeled for movement. For a glint. For the wrong kind of silence. 50 yards out, something shifts, you freeze. It's not a soldier, it's a cow. Or rather, what used to be a cow. Now it's ribs and mud and flies the size of acorns. Someone behind you mutters, "War's hell." You nod. Not because of the carnage. Because you'd hoped it was a cow. You haven't smelled cooked beef in weeks. You reach a shell crater filled with water the color of weak tea. No bodies today. That's something, then you hear it. A voice. Low. Moaning. Not English. The patrol leader gestures for silence, then crawls forward like a centipede in slow motion. You follow, belly to mud, every inch of you tensed. It's a German soldier, alive. His leg is a horror show of blood, mud, and bandage that's been more decorative than functional for the last 48 hours. He doesn't reach for a weapon. He's barely breathing. One eye is swollen shut, the other locked on the horizon like he still sees something worth looking at. You wait for orders, the sergeant curses. We can't carry him. No one says anything. The man starts to cry, quietly, like someone who's forgotten what loud is. Then he switches to humming. You don't recognize the tune. He dies 10 minutes later. You leave him where he fell. A tin tag gets written. Someone makes a small cross from 2 twigs. That's the ritual. There's no time for more. You return to the trench. Your boots weigh more now. Not from the mud. From knowing. Someone offers you a sip of watered-down rum. You accept. It doesn't help. Nothing ever really helps. The day continues. You clean gear, swap out sandbags, and help drag a corpse from the collapsed section of trench to the temporary burial trench. Everyone works fast. No one talks. The dead man's name was probably James. Or Tom. You don't ask. You just add a stone to his shallow grave and hope it keeps the rats out. You're given an hour of rest. You spend it staring at the sky through slats of wood. It almost looks blue today. You count cloud shapes like you're 7 years old. One looks like a chicken. One like a boot. One looks like your mum's face, but that's probably because you haven't seen her in 18 months and your brain is starting to improvise. A pigeon flutters down near the trench. Carrier bird. You get up, curious, and see a rolled message tied to its leg. The bird handler, a private with eyes too old for his age, removes it and reads, "New orders." The phrase hits like ice in your belly. Tomorrow morning, you're advancing. They don't use the word attack. It's movement. Push. Action. Like you're helping rearrange furniture, not charging through barbed wire into bullets. That night is quiet, too quiet. Someone lights a cigarette against orders, just to feel the warmth. You smell tobacco and fear. Your trench mate, Wilkins, offers you a bite of chocolate. You don't ask where he got it. You break it into 2 pieces and pretend it's the best thing you've ever tasted. Because right now, it is. You don't sleep. Instead, you think about school, you think about when you kissed that girl behind the bakery. What was her name? Lily? No, Lizzie. She laughed when you missed and kissed her ear. You think about whether your boots will hold together tomorrow. You think about whether you'll come back. Then, it's dawn. You wake to more fog, more mud, and a strange, empty silence. Like the world took a deep breath and hasn't decided whether to scream or not. You line up with the others. Your helmet feels too loose. Your rifle is suddenly heavy, even though it's the same weight it's always been. A whistle blows. You climb. You run. It's chaos. Mud. Shouts. Gunfire so loud it becomes silence. You trip. You fall. You crawl. A man next to you loses his leg and keeps screaming for his mother. You fire your rifle. You don't know if you hit anything. Someone's blood is on your hands. Maybe yours. Maybe not. Barbed wire tears your sleeve. Your arm stings. You keep moving. A shell lands behind you. You're thrown forward. You hit the ground. And everything goes black. When you wake, it's quiet. You're not sure how long it's been. The sun is shining. Somehow, you're lying in a crater, half covered in dirt. Your ears ring like church bells underwater. You taste blood. And earth. And maybe, faintly, chocolate. You sit up slowly, you're alone, smoke rises on the horizon, crows circle, you stand, wobble. Pick up your rifle, you look toward the trench you came from, and start walking, one foot, then the other. You're still cold, still tired, still scared, but you're walking. You hum something, maybe that German tune, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like maybe you're not just surviving, maybe, just maybe, you're remembering how to be alive. Your feet hurt. Again, but this time, it's not because of boots or sandals, it's because you've been standing for 7 hours, stirring a cauldron the size of a wine barrel. Your arms are sore. Your back is bent. Welcome to Salem, Massachusetts, October 1692, the witch trials are in full swing, and you, unfortunately, are the town cook's apprentice. You didn't ask for this job. You just happened to make decent stew once, and now you're trapped in a smoky kitchen, next to a judge who insists on extra pepper in everything, even confessions. You ladle another spoonful of squash soup into a wooden bowl. It smells okay. Mostly. The judge slurps it like it's proof of God's mercy and says, "Warming. Like truth." You nod. Because what else do you say to that? Let's get one thing out of the way, you're not a witch. Probably. But in 1692, that doesn't mean much. If you own a cat, read too quickly, or know what rosemary does for digestion, you're suspicious. You once said the moon looked pretty during a thunderstorm. Big mistake. That was apparently weather manipulation. Now, you mostly stay quiet, the courtroom next door smells like sweat, old wood, and the fear of being clever. Girls scream. Men shout. You stir your soup, at one point, you hear someone shout, "She made my baby float." You do not investigate. Historical fact, the Salem witch trials resulted in 20 people executed and hundreds accused. Mostly women. Accusations ranged from "she looked at me oddly" to "my cow won't give milk, and she lives nearby." Hysteria ran through the town like a fire in dry grass, fueled by politics, Puritanism, and a collective need to blame someone for everything. You try not to make eye contact as you carry soup into the hearing room. The accused is an old woman with a tired back and smarter eyes than most people here. Her name might be Sarah or Martha or anything, really. The names blur. She looks at you. Just briefly. You spill some soup on your apron. The judge asks, "Did she speak to you?" You shake your head so fast you nearly twist something. Later, in the alley behind the meeting house, a girl your age, Mary, probably, gives you a piece of dried apple and says, "They'll say you saw her fly if they think you blinked wrong." You ask, "What do I do then?" She shrugs. Blink less. Academic debate alert. Some historians believe the Salem hysteria had roots in ergot poisoning, a mold found in rye that can cause hallucinations. Others say it was strictly political, a way to settle old grudges under the disguise of moral panic. Some even believe it was mass trauma passed down through repressed communities. The point is, nobody agrees. But everyone agrees it was terrible. That night, you return home to a creaky loft above the bakery. Your only friend is a rat named Elias who doesn't talk, which is good. If he did, you'd probably have to report him. You light a candle. It flickers too quickly, and for a second, you panic. Then you remember the window's open. You eat leftover stew with a chunk of rye bread so hard you could build with it. You chew carefully. It still cracks a tooth. Outside, the night is quiet, but tense. You can feel the town holding its breath. Every window glows faintly. Every chimney releases suspicion with the smoke. Your neighbor is praying again. Loudly. Repeating the same psalm over and over. Like it's a spell. Maybe it is. You look at your hands. They smell like cloves and anxiety. Did you put too much pepper in the soup? Was the judge pleased or plotting? Why did that girl smile at you like she knew your dreams? You try to sleep, but the wind howls. The kind of howl that sounds like names being whispered. You press your fingers to your ears and hum the only hymn you remember. You don't dream of flying or spells or justice. You dream of silence, of a day when no one asks, "And what did you see?" You wake before dawn, not because you want to, but because Elias the rat decided your ear looked chewable. You swat him gently away and sit up in your loft, every board beneath you groaning in a language of splinters. The air is colder than it was yesterday. That might be a bad omen. Then again, everything might be a bad omen now. The bakery below is still dark, but you can smell the faintest ghost of yesterday's bread. You pull on your wool shift, patched in 3 places, one of them with a bit of someone else's sleeve, and creep downstairs. Your first job is sweeping. Your second job is pretending you're invisible. As the hearth rekindles and your hands begin to thaw, you hear the church bell toll 6 times. It echoes across Salem like a judgment. Always 6 tolls. Always before the trials begin. You wonder if the bell itself is tired. Outside, the town starts to stir. You hear boots crunching frost, murmurs in clipped prayer, the occasional shout from a restless animal or a child already asking for sugar. You press your forehead to the window pane and watch as people shuffle through the morning fog, wrapped in suspicion and wool. At the courthouse, things are already heating up, figuratively and literally. The hearth in the courtroom is blazing, and a woman is screaming. You can't see her, but you recognize the tone. That's the "I didn't do it but it won't matter" scream. You've heard it 5 times this week. Someone runs past the bakery window. A boy. His eyes wide, his hands red with cold and something darker. He slips, stumbles, and vanishes into the fog. You hope he's running from something, not to it. Your boss, Mistress Althea, the town cook, arrives soon after. Her eyes are sunken, her fingers cracked from salt and scrubbing. She smells like onions and regret. She says, "More soup." You nod. You've stopped asking who it's for. Back in the kitchen, the cauldron boils again. This time it's barley and bones, with dried herbs and a spoonful of lard. You stir it counterclockwise because someone once said clockwise was unlucky. You don't believe in that, but right now, belief is like seasoning. You add it whether it works or not. As the steam rises, Althea mutters, "Another one confessed. Said her shadow danced without her." You stir faster. You wonder what your shadow's been up to. When the stew is ready, you carry a tray into the meeting house, careful not to spill. The judge isn't here yet, but the accused is, a young woman named Rebecca. You know her. Everyone does. She once fixed your brother's torn shirt with thread she pulled from her own sleeve. She's chained to a chair. Not tightly, but insultingly. Her hair is matted, her eyes too calm. That calm terrifies you more than any scream. She looks up. You believe them. You freeze. You're not supposed to talk. Not to them. "I believe in soup," you say. She laughs. Quietly. Sadly, that's a start. The judge enters. He smells like musk and importance. He nods at you and tastes the stew. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't frown either. That's a good sign. You retreat. In the alley behind the meeting house, you find Mary again. She's chewing on a twig of licorice root and drawing something in the dirt with her toe. A flower, maybe. Or a star. Or a sigil, depending on who's watching. She says, "Rebecca's done." You say, "She's not guilty." "No one is," she shrugs. "But truth's got a limp in this town." You want to argue. Instead, you sit down beside her. The dirt is cold. Your breath fogs in front of you like the ghosts everyone's so afraid of. Mary glances at you sideways. "You ever think of leaving?" "Where would I go?" Somewhere that doesn't care if your cat blinks twice. You smile. That sounds nice. But you both know you won't leave. No one does. That afternoon, something strange happens. The judge doesn't return for supper. Althea is furious. She says, "I boiled that marrow an hour. If he lets it congeal, I'll hex him myself." Then she blinks. Realizes what she said. The room goes quiet. You keep stirring. Later, a messenger comes, breathless and blotchy, and says the judge was found weeping in the courthouse, repeating the word feathers over and over. Mary says it was a spell. You say it was guilt. You both might be wrong. That night, you light your candle and sit in silence. Elias squeaks from the rafters. You toss him a crumb and whisper, "You ever wish you were a pigeon?" He stares. Unimpressed, you try to sleep, but the wind knocks over your candle and you're left in darkness, listening to the sound of wood settling and questions pacing your skull. In your dream, you're cooking, not soup, something else. Something bubbling and golden and impossible. The smell makes your eyes water. Someone asks what's in it. You say, "Truth." They spit it out. You wake up to fire, not literal fire. Just heat, sweat, noise, people yelling in the street. You throw on your coat and run. Rebecca's house is burning. They say it was lightning. They say it was justice. They say she danced in the flames, but when you get there, there's no storm. Only smoke. And ashes, and no body, people whisper. Some cross themselves. Others say she turned into a crow and flew away. You say nothing. You watch the last ember curl like a question mark and fall into silence. Days pass, the trial's slow, not stop, never that, but slow. Like a fever breaking. The town starts to blink again, the judge resigns. He says God spoke to him in a dream. Others say he saw something in Rebecca's eyes that made him doubt everything. You don't know which to believe. Mary leaves, you help her pack. She hugs you once and says, "You're not like them." You say, "That's what I'm afraid of." The night she departs, the sky clears for the first time in weeks. Stars you forgot existed blaze overhead. Elias sits on your shoulder. You pretend he's watching the stars too. You keep cooking. The judge's replacement likes less pepper. You start to read in secret, old books with brittle pages and ink that looks like spider legs. You find one on herbs. One on dreams. One on recipes that don't make sense. You write your own, hidden beneath floorboards. One day, years later, someone knocks on your door. They ask for soup. They look hungry, not just for food, but for something warmer. You let them in. You stir the pot. You smile, and say, "You believe in soup." Because still, even now, it's a start. You've never seen so much gold in your life, not in piles, exactly. More like, smeared. On ceilings, on furniture, even on your dinner spoon. It's the 18th century, and you're at the Palace of Versailles. Which sounds glamorous until you realize, you're just a servant. You carry a tray of custard into a room so large it has its own echo. A dog in a satin bow sniffs your ankle and sneezes. A nobleman with hair taller than a hatbox waves you off without eye contact. You back away, muttering pardon, even though you did nothing wrong. That's just what you say here, over and over. Pardon. Pardon. Like a prayer to etiquette, your shoes pinch. The floors are marble. Everything clicks. Echoes, glides. You shuffle past a mirror taller than your house and wonder what you'd look like if you stood up straighter. But you don't. That's not your place. You sleep in a hallway closet behind the chambermaid's quarters. There's a blanket, a hook for your apron, and one candle stub. You're lucky, some don't even have walls. Historical fact, Versailles was both breathtaking and absurd. Louis XIV had over 300 nobles living under his roof, many of whom schemed all day just to hold his shaving towel or pour his chocolate. The court ran on ritual, gossip, and perfume strong enough to knock out a goat. It's your second week, and you've memorized 2 rules. 1. Never turn your back on royalty. And 2. Never sneeze during a meal. The first is punishable by humiliation, the second by dismissal, or worse, relocation to the kitchens. The kitchens are chaotic. Today, you're sent there to fetch figs. It's 5 a.m., and the chef is already screaming in 3 languages. Someone's chopping eels. Another is whipping cream like it insulted his mother. You dodge a flying ladle, grab the figs, and run. One bursts in your hand. Sticky. Sweet. Unforgivable. Back upstairs, you pass a group of courtiers playing cards on a table worth more than your entire village. One of them asks if you've seen his fan. You shake your head. He sighs dramatically, as if you just lost him a war. You're assigned to attend to a duchess who insists on rosewater in her wash basin and silence while she applies her eyebrow patches. She once told you, "I was born for softness." You thought she meant pillows. You now realize she meant life. She smells like almonds and entitlement. Her dog wears pearls. You think its name is Jean-Claude. Or maybe Madame. Either way, it bites. Let's toss in a bizarre fact. Aristocrats at Versailles used to relieve themselves behind curtains. In hallways, or on stairwells. There were chamber pots, yes, but privacy. That was for peasants. The palace was beautiful, but it stank. Literally, at dinner, you stand behind a chair for 4 hours while nobles argue over who gets the 3rd orange slice. One spills wine on the tablecloth and blames it on solar vibrations. You nod, because science, scholars still debate the psychology of Versailles. Was it the height of civilized ritual or a gilded prison? Some say Louis XIV used endless etiquette to control the nobles. Others believe the nobles preferred it that way, better to fight for a ribbon than a real responsibility. Versailles was a theater. And you, my dear, are in the chorus. That night, you sneak a leftover tart into your closet. You take small bites, savoring the apricot like it's rebellion. You hum softly. It echoes off the broom handles, a shadow flickers past the crack under the door. You freeze. Was it a rat? A royal? A rat wearing royal boots? You wait. Nothing, then you hear music, soft. Slow. A violin and harp, maybe. Somewhere down the hall, a ball is still spinning. Feet slide across polished floors. Laughter drips like candle wax. You close your eyes and imagine dancing. Not serving. Just once, but even in your dream, you're holding a tray. You wake before dawn, as usual, to the sound of someone retching into a vase. That's the Comte something, 2 doors down, who insists on drinking Spanish breakfast wine at midnight and regrets it every morning. You listen for a moment, long enough to confirm it's not your problem, then rise, dress, and button your livery with the stiff, sleepy rhythm of someone who hasn't had a full night's rest in a month. The hallway is cold. The candle stub in your closet gave out sometime in the night, so you're stepping into Versailles grandeur with hair that refuses to lie flat and breath that smells like yesterday's onion tart. Your shoes are already protesting. They always protest. But at least they match. Unlike Baptiste's, who once had to blacken one slipper with ink after the laundry rotation stole its twin, you carry laundry today, sheets from Madame de Noailles' quarters that smell like lavender and jealousy. She claims to hate perfume but demands her linens be smoked over lavender sprigs before being aired. You wonder if she even knows what laundry is. The hallway's parquet floor has just been waxed, and your socks, worn thin beneath your buckled shoes, slip with each step. You curse softly. Then louder, when you knock your knee into a gilded table bearing a porcelain clock of 2 cherubs embracing a dolphin. One cherub loses a toe. You pause. Consider your options. Then quietly tuck the broken toe into your apron pocket. At breakfast, you serve pastries with names longer than your shift. The dolphin likes the ones with orange peel and calls you mon ombre, his shadow, because he doesn't remember your name but says you look like one. You take it as a compliment. Mostly, you refill the queen's tea 3 times. Each time she forgets and comments on how hot it is. The court physician mutters something about memory dampened by inbreeding. A page snickers. You do not. You pour the tea. Behind you, someone coughs with the dedication of an unpaid actor. It's the Marquis de Louvois. He wants attention. Always. Today it's his gout. Yesterday it was a prophecy. The day before, he announced he'd been cursed by the moon. You keep your eyes on the custard. Mid-morning, a page tells you you're needed in the gardens. Outside, the sun is too bright, and the air smells of clipped rosemary and ornamental suffering. The gardeners wear better shoes than you. You're told to help move a table, solid marble, because the Duchesse de Montpensier wants to drink lemonade under a different statue today. She says the old one made her feel insufficiently nymph-like. It takes 6 of you to move the table. She doesn't say thank you. She doesn't say anything. Just lifts her glass and tells the harpist to play something less visually flat. A bee lands in the lemonade. She screams, "You are blamed, you are not surprised, you're sent to the kitchens as punishment." Not permanent, just long enough for them to forget the bee incident. Again, the kitchen is hotter than purgatory and louder than Massachusetts. The head chef yells imbecile. Add a spoon. Someone is crying into a bowl of bechamel. You are handed a tray of asparagus and told to arrange them in the shape of a fleur-de-lis. By size, you do this for 2 hours, the sauce curdles anyway, that afternoon, while returning a stack of unused napkins. Starched like battle flags, you pass by the gallery where the king's mistress is having her portrait painted. She reclines on a chaise like she invented lounging. Her wig is 3 feet tall and full of tiny porcelain birds. You're fairly sure one is nesting. The painter sighs and asks for more gold. She says, add a swan. He says, live or painted? She says, yes. Back in the servants' hall, someone's been caught stealing sugared violets again. They're being scolded by the steward while 5 others casually chew in the background. One has purple on his chin. No one mentions it. You help carry a harp to the salon. The harpist is hungover and smells like peaches and regret. He tells you he once played for Voltaire. You believe him. Mostly because he says it with the sincerity of a man who once mistook a footstool for a duchess and bowed anyway. Dinner prep begins at 4. By then you've changed clothes twice, once due to spilled wine, once due to a small noble child who vomited on your sleeve while claiming he'd been cursed by boredom. You now wear the livery of the stable hands, because nothing else is clean. You smell like hay and politeness. At supper, you stand behind the chair of the Countess de Fleury, who speaks entirely in sighs. She sighs when her plate arrives. Sighs when it's taken. Sighs when someone breathes too loudly. Once she sighed so hard her corset snapped. She tells the lady beside her that reality is coarse and vulgar, and she's thinking of moving to the countryside. Everyone nods. No one believes her. Dessert is candied rose petals and cream. The petals are arranged into the shape of a dove, which melts slightly under the candles. The Duchess blames the ceiling. You are tasked with finding a cooler dove. After the guests retire, you're still working. You polish silver. Scrub spilled wine from brocade. Collect empty wig powder jars. Once, you find a false beauty mark stuck to a candelabra. You don't ask questions. At midnight, you finally crawl into your closet. Elias the broom has been replaced with Henrietta the mop, but otherwise, it's the same. You light your candle stub and eat a crust of bread you smuggled from the banquet. It's stale, but tastes faintly of ham. You close your eyes, the hallway is quiet, until it isn't. Distant music again. A faint echo of violins. And then laughter, delicate and sharp. You open your eyes, not because it's strange, but because it always happens. Every night, you slip out of your closet, bare feet soft on marble. Down the hall, the music grows clearer. You follow, through the gallery. Past the mirrored doors. Into a room that doesn't exist by day, the ballroom. It's empty. Supposedly, but the chandeliers are lit. The air smells of lavender and melted sugar. And faintly, just faintly, you see dancers. Not full bodies. Not faces. Just motion. Shapes in powdered wigs and jeweled shoes. Waltzing. Spinning. Laughing, ghosts, dreams, a memory Versailles refuses to let die. You don't know, you press your back against the wall and watch. One shape glides past you. Almost close enough to touch. You hold your breath, then, a figure turns, you see its face, it's you, but not you now. You in satin. In velvet. A smile instead of exhaustion. A hand outstretched, you blink, it's gone, the music ends, you're alone again, in the morning, no one believes you, you don't blame them, you serve figs again. Polish silver again. Nod at complaints about phantom drafts and vanished fans, but every night, you return to the ballroom, and every night, the dancers return too. One day, you think, you'll step into their waltz. Just once, even if it's just a dream Versailles dreams through you. And the cold, not winter coat cold. Not forgot your socks cold. This is the kind of cold that gets into your teeth. Into your bones. It's 1941, and you're standing somewhere in the Soviet Union. You don't know exactly where, because the map you were given is soggy, torn, and possibly upside down. You're in the Red Army now. Congratulations. They gave you a rifle, but no bullets. You've got a coat, but it's made of dreams and thread. You're pretty sure your boots used to belong to a horse, and you are starving, a voice yells, forward. And your boots make a sound like wet paper as you trudge through the snow. Your stomach growls so loudly that the guy next to you mistakes it for artillery. You haven't eaten meat in weeks. Now, let's pause for a moment to talk about food. Actual Red Army rations during World War II were, optimistic. In theory, you were supposed to get about 800 to 1,200 calories per day, mostly bread, watery soup, maybe a cube of margarine if someone likes you. In reality, you might lick your spoon and call it dinner. Today's meal, a slice of black bread the size of a cigarette box and something called kasha, which is either boiled buckwheat or boiled sawdust depending on who made it. It tastes like history. Sad history. You sit in the snow and eat slowly. Not because you want to savor it, but because you don't want it to be over. A man next to you offers you half his turnip. You trade him half your bread. This is considered diplomacy, then the whistle blows. You stand. The fighting starts again. Historical fact, the Eastern Front during World War II was brutal beyond modern comprehension. Cold, starvation, and relentless combat killed more than 20 million Soviet soldiers and civilians. It wasn't just war, it was survival inside a meat grinder. You crawl into a bombed-out house for cover. The walls are full of bullet holes. Someone's coat is frozen to a chair. You try to peel it off and fail. You sit on the floor and shiver so hard your bones clink. Then you smell something, soup. Real soup. Could it be? You follow the scent to a small pot hanging over a fire. Inside, cabbage, water, maybe some bone. It's heaven. You dip your spoon and drink, it burns your tongue. You don't care, and then you see her, a woman, civilian, wrapped in a shawl. She holds a ladle like a weapon. You fight? She asks, you nod. She points to the pot. One scoop. That's it. You thank her. You don't smile. Smiling wastes energy. Weird wartime fact: Soviet soldiers sometimes boiled leather, belts, shoes, even book covers, to make soup. It didn't taste good, but it kept your jaw moving and your belly fooled. You once tried it yourself. Never again. Academic Debate Corner. Historians continue to argue whether Stalin's strategic relocations saved or doomed millions. Was the Red Army's resilience a testament to Soviet strength or a desperate reaction to catastrophic planning? Both? Either way, you're not here for the essays. You're here, shivering, spoon in hand, hoping the next explosion doesn't have your name on it. Night falls, you curl into a corner and try to sleep. Snow slips through the cracks in the walls. You wrap your arms around your knees. Your dreams are thin and taste like turnips. Someone starts singing. Low and slow. A lullaby in Russian. You don't know the words, but the sound is soft, warm, completely out of place. You pretend it's your mother. The next morning, someone steals your last piece of bread. You don't cry. You just stare at the snow and think about soup. Your stomach gnaws at itself like a starving dog. You've stopped thinking of food in terms of meals. Now, food is a texture. A warmth. A memory. Something that existed once, a long time ago, in a childhood that belonged to someone else. You keep moving because stopping is worse. Stopping means frostbite, or snipers, or the way your own body starts bargaining with the cold. Just 5 minutes, it says. Just sit down. But 5 minutes turns into never standing again. You saw it happen to Vazia. He sat down to retie his boot. They found him stiff as a broom handle an hour later, still holding the laces. You walk with your squad down what used to be a road. Now it's just churned snow and ash. There are buildings to your left, once homes, now jagged silhouettes full of ghosts and icicles. One window still has curtains. Floral. Dancing in the wind like they don't know the war has come, your captain stops and raises his hand. You freeze. Instinct, then you hear it. A distant hum, airplane, you all scatter. There's no command. No plan. Just motion, jumping into ditches, behind walls, beneath carts. You curl under what might have once been a piano. The snow is sticky with soot and gunpowder. The hum grows into a roar, boom, the earth convulses, boom, shrapnel screams through the air. You cover your head, grit in your teeth, your mouth open in a silent yell. The air punches you in the chest. Your ribs vibrate, then, silence. Not peace. The silence after a hammer falls and you wait to see if you're still standing. You are, barely, you sit up. Everything rings. Snow falls again, as if nothing happened. As if the world didn't just split open and yell your name. Yuri, the boy next to you, isn't moving. You lean over. Tap his shoulder. His eyes are open, he's not blinking. You whisper, sorry. That's all you can give him. You take his gloves. He'd want that. That's the rule, the dead share. The living apologize, then you stand, again. Another strange war detail, people keep diaries. You do, too. On scraps of paper. Edges of newspapers. Even bark. You wrote on the back of a German cigarette box once. You don't know why you do it. Maybe because it reminds you that you're real. That this isn't a fever dream wearing a fur hat. You write things like Tuesday, bitter wind, lost another toe, or Lena smiled when the soup had onion. Simple things. Human things. Against all odds, you're still trying to make sentences. You're still trying to exist. Later that day, your unit finds an abandoned barn. This is a miracle. Inside, hey. A dead chicken. One broken lantern. The officer tells you all to rest. You pile together like puppies, stealing warmth from whoever is closest. You hear someone fart and then 5 people giggle. It's the best moment you've had in weeks. Someone lights the lantern. The glow is small, gold, intimate. It bounces off the cracked walls and makes you feel, for one breath, like you're back in a storybook. The kind with heroes and endings. You pluck feathers from the chicken. It's stiff but cookable. You make a joke. It's already pre-frozen. No one laughs. But someone smiles. You pluck the rest. Soup is made. It's hot and oily. And you find something like meat in it. No one asks questions. You take turns sipping, not slurping. That would be blasphemy, you think, if I survive this. I'll never complain about soup again. Later, someone finds an accordion. No one knows how to play it well. But they try. The tune is lopsided, wheezy, possibly offensive to real music, but it fills the barn with something that isn't silence. And that's good enough. You lie back. The hay pokes you through your coat. Someone's snoring. You listen, and for the first time in what feels like years, you think about what you'll do after the war. You try to imagine it. Summer, real tomatoes, your mother's hands braiding garlic. A bed. Not straw. Not snow. A bed. Sheets so clean they smell like soap. Maybe you'll write a book. Or grow potatoes. Or sleep for a month, you don't know, but you let the image settle behind your eyes. Outside, the snow thickens. Inside, someone begins reciting poetry. Badly. From memory. You don't care, it's Pushkin. Maybe. Or a fairy tale, someone corrects him. They argue. Then laugh. You think, we're still human. And that, somehow, feels like victory. You close your eyes and sleep like someone who might wake up tomorrow, and you do. You wake up in a box. Okay, not a box exactly. A trench. But it might as well be a box, tight, muddy, and barely wider than your shoulders. It's 1916, and you're on the Western Front of World War I. You've got lice in your collar and mud in places that should never know mud. Your helmet doubles as a soup bowl, a pillow, and a thing to bang when rats sneak by your feet. Someone hands you a letter. It smells like home, ink and old bread. You don't read it. Not yet. First, breakfast, which is a problem. Because today, breakfast is bully beef, also known as canned corned beef with the texture of regret. You scoop it out with your knife and chase it with a hard biscuit that could crack a tooth. You chew slowly, not because it's good, because it's your only meal until dusk. Someone nearby coughs for 20 straight seconds. You stare at the sky. It's gray. The kind of gray that makes you forget color exists, and that's when it starts to rain. Fact check, rain was a constant enemy in World War I trenches. It turned floors into puddles, walls into slides, and feet into soggy memories. Trench foot, caused by long exposure to dampness and cold, could lead to gangrene or amputation. Soldiers used to smear whale oil on their feet just to survive. You don't have whale oil. You have socks that could qualify as science experiments. You lift a tarp and duck into a dugout, where someone is boiling tea over a flickering stove made from a biscuit tin. The tea smells vaguely like smoke and salt. You sip. It helps. A little. You finally read the letter. It's from your sister. She says your cat misses you. She also says someone named Harriet keeps asking about you. You smile, then someone yells, gas. You fumble for your mask, rubber, tight, stinking of last week's onions. You pull it over your face just as the yellow mist creeps in, ghostly and slow, chlorine gas. Not romantic, Your eyes burn. Your chest tightens. You hold your breath. You think of your cat. After 10 minutes, the all-clear sounds. You lift the mask and spit into the mud. The taste will stay with you for days. Bizarre fact: World War I soldiers sometimes peed on rags and tied them over their mouths to neutralize chlorine gas. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Kind of. You return to your trench. The rain hasn't stopped. You wring out your sleeves and scrape the mud from your boots with a stick. Then you sit and wait, and wait. World War I trench life was 95% waiting, 4% terror, and 1% wondering why your socks smell like onions. You pass the time by writing bad poetry in your notebook. Something about barbed wire and longing. You doodle a pigeon. You wonder if pigeons ever get cold. Somewhere down the line, a harmonica starts playing. It's off-key. You don't mind. Then, out of nowhere, shellfire, the world cracks open. Dirt sprays into your mouth. You dive behind a sandbag and hug the ground like it's your grandmother. Someone screams. You pray it's not your friend, the harmonica guy. When it ends, you crawl out and count your limbs. Still there. Mostly. Academic side note: historians still debate the psychology of shell shock. Was it a neurological injury or a trauma response? The term eventually evolved into what we now call PTSD. Back then, it was often misunderstood, or worse, dismissed. Cowardice, they said. As if the human brain was built for non-stop explosions. Later, someone finds a tin of jam, strawberry. Slightly expired, you share it with 5 other people. 1 spoon. No words. Just sticky fingers and the faintest hint of sweetness. It feels like a miracle. That night, you huddle under your coat, wet and cold. But for once, your stomach isn't entirely empty. You close your eyes and dream of toast. Of butter. Of Harriet, but mostly the toast. You wake up to a new sound, not shellfire. Not coughing. Not even the squelch of boots in wet earth, birdsong. At first, you think you're dreaming. But then it comes again, a real bird, somewhere in the tangles of barbed wire and churned mud. A trill. Sharp. Sweet. Ridiculously out of place. You sit up slowly, your coat stiff from yesterday's rain, your breath steaming in the morning chill. The sky's still gray, but a gentler kind. Less like ash, more like fog. You take it as a win. Corporal Meeks is already up, lacing his boots with the urgency of a man determined not to lose another toenail. He grunts a mornin' and offers you half a biscuit. It's soft. You blink. How old is this? You ask. He shrugs. Don't know. But I dropped it, and it bent. You both eat it anyway. Someone shouts from farther down the trench. New orders. Marching. Or maybe digging. You're too tired to care. You wipe your face with a rag that smells like trench stew and cold fear, then grab your gear. You check your rifle. Still jammed. Still yours. Another bizarre fact: most soldiers named their rifles. Yours is called Maud, and you've whispered more secrets to her than to any living soul. You kiss the stock for luck. No one makes fun of you. Everyone has their own rituals. One guy carries a lucky button. Another never steps with his left foot first. Whatever keeps you from going mad, you're sent to dig a new forward trench. The ground resists you like a corpse refusing burial. It's thick with clay, stones, and frozen roots. You dig anyway. Your hands blister through your gloves, your back aches, and your stomach snarls. But you don't stop. Hours pass. Or maybe minutes. Time bends here, long stretches of nothing, then chaos so fast it rewrites your sense of self. Someone finds a rat the size of a small loaf of bread. It's chewing a soggy pack of cigarettes. You name it Captain Fangs and salute it as it scurries away, you haven't laughed in days. You laugh now, at lunch, you get soup. Barely warm. Thin as memory, but it has a carrot slice in it, an actual slice. You hold it on your spoon like a relic, then gently eat around it, saving it for last. When you finally bite into it, it's soft, sweet, impossibly orange. You almost cry, you don't. Instead, you get back to digging. As you work, you see something sticking out of the mud. Not metal. Not bone, paper, you brush it off. A photograph. A woman, smiling. Her hair is curled. There's a dog in her lap. The edges are singed. You don't know who she is, but you fold the photo and put it in your breast pocket anyway. Maybe she'll bring you luck. Later that day, the mail comes, another letter from your sister. She says Harriet has baked a pie in your honor. Blueberry. Didn't come out right, she writes, but she insisted. You don't care if it was made of gravel. You picture the crust, the uneven folds, the sugar burnt on top. You close your eyes and imagine the smell. It's better than morphine. Evening brings mist and a promise of sleep. You line your boots up to dry. Someone's playing cards with a deck drawn on scrap paper. No kings or queens, just letters. You ask to join. You lose 3 games. You don't care. It's something to do. Afterward, you all gather under the lean-to made of broken crates. There's talk of home. Of food. Of things you'll do when it's over. That phrase has weight. It means hope. When it's over, I'll open a bakery, says Meeks. When it's over, I'll learn to swim, says another. You don't say anything at first. Then, when it's over, I'll sit on a real chair. That gets a chuckle, just a chair. You nod. One that doesn't move. Doesn't sink. Doesn't smell like other people. They nod. That's fair. You all fall quiet, then someone sings. It's a lullaby. From before the war. Maybe their mother sang it. Maybe they heard it once on a crackling record player. The words are soft, fragile, barely surviving the wind. You hum along. Eventually, you drift to sleep. Your coat's still damp. Your socks are crusted with dried mud. Your fingers twitch in your dreams, but you're still here, and tomorrow, maybe there will be toast. You are very, very full, and also very, very French. It's 1683, and you're in the Palace of Versailles. Not a trench. Not a field. Not a frozen barn. No. This is a hallway made entirely of mirrors and gold. And your biggest worry isn't gunfire, it's indigestion. You've just finished your 5th course. The king has not yet burped, so the meal continues. You wipe duck fat from your sleeve with a linen napkin that costs more than a farmer earns in a year. You think about loosening your corset or cravat. You think about dying from foie gras. Welcome to court life under Louis XIV. Historical truth bomb. Versailles was the pinnacle of royal overindulgence. Meals for nobles often involved dozens of courses. From roast swan to candied violets, accompanied by endless wine and intrigue. Etiquette ruled all, including when to sneeze. You sneeze. Quietly. A servant rushes in and replaces your chair. To distract yourself from your growing stomach, you look at the chandeliers. There are 43 in this room. You count them twice. Just to be sure, across the table, a marquis glares at you. Is it because you took the last almond tart? Is it because you spoke directly to the Duchess of Maine without using her full title, which includes the word sublime and radiant? Hard to say. You wish for war. Or at least for a walk. Weird court custom. People at Versailles used to walk very slowly, not because they were graceful, but because their clothing was so elaborate that running could kill them. You, at this moment, are wearing 4 layers of silk and 2 wigs. One for volume, one for luck. Someone passes you a plate of oysters. You pass them on. No thank you. Not after the duck liver sorbet. Then someone claps, it's time for dancing, of course it is, you stand. You bow. You extend a hand to someone whose perfume smells like rosewater and power, you step into the hall of mirrors and begin the minuet. Right foot, left foot, slow. Elbow out. Fan flick. Smile with only your eyes. Try not to burp, academic quirk. Historians debate whether Versailles was a tool of statecraft or simply an egotistical fantasy. Was Louis XIV brilliant for forcing nobles to live in a golden cage, or just dangerously bored? Perhaps both. But you? You're too busy counting chandeliers again, you finally escape the dance, your feet hurt. Your ribs hurt. Your pride hurts, you sneak into the gardens for air. The gardens are symmetrical to the point of madness. Every hedge clipped, every path aligned with a celestial body or a royal ego, you sit by a fountain shaped like a horse vomiting water, you pull out a biscuit from your sleeve, don't ask. You nibble. It tastes like lemon and wealth, a bird lands beside you. It's not afraid. Nothing in Versailles is afraid, except those who are clever, a whisper, they say the king's wig is stuffed with lavender. Another whisper, they say the dauphin eats only blue foods on Wednesdays. And you? You say nothing. You just eat your biscuit and dream of simpler food. Maybe porridge. Or a piece of cheese not sculpted into a cherub, later that night. In a bed wider than your childhood home, you lie awake thinking about ducks. It was a really good duck. You wake to the rustle of satin, not your own, of course. A maid is in the room, already folding your evening garments, which you do not remember removing. She nods without looking up, murmurs, your toilette is in 30 minutes, and glides out, leaving a trail of rose-scented air behind her. You blink. The canopy above your bed is hand-embroidered with stars. Real gold thread. You know because one came loose once, and you tasted it. It was disappointing. You rise carefully, knees cracking like cheap porcelain, and slip your feet into velvet slippers. They're not yours. Nothing at Versailles truly is. Everything belongs to the king. Even you, your toilette is a performance. 2 footmen help you into a robe that could double as a tapestry. Someone else brings hot water for your face. A 4th person, a child whose job you do not understand, brushes your wig. Not your hair, your wig. You try to speak but remember the custom, morning silence unless spoken to by someone of higher rank. You are not higher rank than anyone. The maid reappears with your wardrobe options, ivory with gold trim or emerald with sapphire buttons. You stare blankly. It doesn't matter. Your outfit is a costume, and the day ahead is a play, rehearsed, formal, and potentially fatal if you bow in the wrong direction. By the time you're fully dressed, you've already sweat through 1 layer of linen. The corset's tight again. Of course it is. You suspect it shrinks overnight, like a serpent preparing to strike. You make your way through the palace's interior corridors, where every door opens at a whisper and every floor tile knows your name. A page bows. A lady curtsies. You respond with the precise nod dictated by your position, 1/2 degree too shallow, and it's scandal. You arrive at the grand couvert, the ceremonial breakfast. Louis is not present. Which is good. You don't have the energy for majesty this early. Instead, you eat eggs poached in almond milk beside a minor viscount who is currently in disgrace for having complimented the wrong duchess's fan. He mumbles something about oysters and exile. You nod politely and concentrate on your toast, and here's the thing, it is divine, brioche, toasted over coals scented with applewood. Topped with quince jam and shaved nutmeg. You wonder, not for the first time, what peasant food tastes like. You imagine a crust of bread, hard and honest. The idea makes your tongue twitch. You're not allowed to linger. You're summoned to a poetry reading in the salon of Diana. It's a disaster, not the room, it's glorious. A ceiling painted with chariots, gods, and egos. But the poem is about tulips and patriotism, and it goes on for 146 lines. You count. Twice, halfway through, the Comte de Richemont lets out a sigh so long and theatrical it might qualify as treason. You pretend to be fascinated by a nearby tapestry just to hide your smirk. After that, fencing demonstrations in the gardens. You watch two men in brocade stab at each other with enough flair to start a war, and you clap dutifully. Then, tea in the marble courtyard. Served by 6 boys dressed as Greek winds. You can't make this up. Someone mentions an affair. Someone else mentions a duel. Someone else mentions the word Spain and everyone suddenly gets very, very quiet. You sip your tea and try not to look interested. Interest is dangerous. Then, the king appears, golden. Gleaming. Radiating sovereign exhaustion, everyone bows. You drop so low your corset creaks. When you rise, he's already looking elsewhere. That's good. That's safe. You're dismissed from the courtyard and sent to watch the Dauphin practice his harpsichord. Which is, fine. He's 6 years old and better than you'll ever be. You applaud as enthusiastically as court allows. Lunch is a formal affair again, more courses. More sauces, a chicken dish that takes 3 servants to describe, a sorbet made with violet petals and secrets, wine that tastes like jeweled fog, and somewhere in all of it, you realize you're not hungry, not really, you just eat because it is expected. Because meals are performance. Because fullness is a symbol of loyalty. Afterward, more dancing, you misstep once and apologize with such fervor that a marquise whispers, it's just the minuet, not a duel. You try to laugh. It comes out as a cough. Finally, in the early evening, you escape to the orangery. It smells of citrus and exile. You find a bench. You sit, and for one glorious moment, no one is watching. You take off one shoe, you wiggle your toes, you exist. No chandeliers, no gossip, no duck liver, just you, one shoe off, under an orange tree that will probably be moved indoors by 10 servants tonight so it doesn't get cold. You consider the word freedom. You whisper it, then someone calls your name. Dinner is in 1 hour. You're needed to stand beside the countess to something while she eats grapes and forgets your existence. You sigh, you put your shoe back on, and you return to the palace. You've made a mistake. You've agreed to go to sea. It's 1492. You're somewhere off the coast of what may or may not be India. Spoiler, it's not India. But you don't know that. You're too busy trying not to vomit into your boots. You're on a ship that smells like fear and salted fish. The Santa Maria, or maybe the Nina or the Pinta, they all blur together when you've had 5 hours of sleep in 3 days. The planks creak. The sails groan. The ocean does not care about your hangover. You bite into a biscuit. Hard, dry, and alive, congratulations, it's full of weevils, historical accuracy. Ship rations in the age of exploration included hardtack, aka ship's biscuit, dried meat, beans, and lots of wine, because the water went rancid fast. Weevils were a feature, not a bug. Literally, you flick the biscuit overboard. A fish eats it. You feel betrayed. Down below deck, someone is singing a sea shanty about a mermaid with a knife. It's catchy. You hum along, even though your lips are cracked from salt and sun. You scratch your beard. Or your chin. Or maybe that's a barnacle. Time has become unreliable. You have a journal. You've written one sentence. It never stops moving. That's it. That's the journal. The captain yells something incomprehensible. You scramble up the ladder and nearly fall into the Atlantic. A dolphin swims by. You feel mocked, suddenly. Land, or a cloud that looks like land, nope. Land, you cheer with the others, even though you're not entirely sure what you're cheering for. Maybe it's just the possibility of not dying at sea. Maybe it's the idea of trees. Or bread without insects. Fun fact, on Columbus's first voyage, landfall was made in what is now the Bahamas, though he believed it was part of Asia. His arrival marked the beginning of centuries of exploration, conquest, and cultural upheaval across the Americas. You drop anchor. Your feet touch ground for the first time in weeks. You kiss the dirt. It's warm. It's not moving. It's perfect. You look around, green. Palm trees. Birds that don't speak Latin. People who definitely look surprised to see you, you wave. Awkwardly, they wave back. Even more awkwardly, the captain says things like claim and glory and for Spain. You just want a bath and a non-violent mango, then come the gifts. Beads. Bells. Trinkets you've never valued, now offered like treasure. You hand over a rusted spoon. It is received like gold, you feel weird about it. Historians still debate, was this the moment that defined globalization, or the first step in a centuries-long catastrophe? Some say it was progress. Others say it was theft wearing a fancy hat. You walk inland, the trees hum with insects you've never heard. The air is warm and wet and kind of smells like bananas. Someone gives you a fruit. You don't know the name. You bite in, it is divine, sweeter than honey, colder than Spain, full of seeds and wonder. You lie under a tree and sigh. For the first time in days, your stomach doesn't rebel, but your conscience begins to. A whisper in your head, what are we doing here? You swat it away like a mosquito. There will be time for philosophy later. Maybe after a nap. Or 100 naps. That night, you sleep under stars that feel new. You dream of ships that sail backward, of cities made of sugar. And of biscuits with no weevils, especially that last part. You are cold, not chilly. Not nippy, cold, bone deep, teeth rattling, hope extinguishing cold. It's 1609, and you're in Jamestown, Virginia, except it's not Virginia yet. It's just mud, snow, and the gnawing realization that none of you packed enough food. You stare into a pot of boiled leather, yes. Leather. The only meal today. Fun fact, if you can call it that. During the starving time in the winter of 1609 to 1610, English settlers in Jamestown were so desperate they resorted to boiling shoe leather for nutrition. Some allegedly went much further, but we won't go there tonight. You chew, it tastes like regret and horse, your fingers barely work. You hold them close to the fire. But there's barely any fire left. The logs are damp, the coals sulk, and the smoke clings to your skin like a cruel perfume. Someone coughs, you all flinch, not because of disease, though that's probably coming, but because the cough sounded like giving up. You reach for your diary. It's frozen shut, you sigh, what's the point, anyway? You came here for land, freedom, and maybe a little fame. What you got was frostbite and a squirrel-based diet. Across from you, someone counts the remaining corn kernels. They whisper each number like a prayer. There are 9. 9 kernels. For 14 people. You laugh. No one joins you. Historical footnote. Of the 500 colonists in Jamestown at the start of that winter, only about 60 survived to spring. Many starved. Some were killed. Some simply disappeared. To this day, historians debate how organized the colony really was. If it wasn't chaos disguised as ambition. Someone enters the hut with bark, tree bark. You don't ask how it's been prepared. You just chew. It's chewy. Bitter. Possibly not food, but it fills the gap, kind of. To distract yourself, you remember England, roast goose. Warm cider. Dry socks, you would give anything for dry socks. Someone starts humming a hymn. You join in. Your voice cracks halfway through, but no one minds. At this point, music is more valuable than meat. Outside, the snow has teeth. You pull your coat tighter, except it's not really a coat. It's just 2 shirts and a belt of optimism. You glance at your neighbor. His face is sunken, eyes glassy, he hasn't blinked in a while. You look away. Just outside the fort, there are whispers, friendly Powhatan tribes, they say. Maybe they'll trade. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're just watching. Either way, it's not your call. You're too weak to be in charge of anything. The captain mumbles about reinforcements from England. Supply ships. Help. Spring, but you've stopped believing in spring. You believe in bark. And leather. And if you're lucky, a mushroom that doesn't kill you. Strange historical aside, some colonists were found with pockets full of dirt. Possibly because they believed it had nutritional value. Or maybe they just wanted something to hold on to. You take a handful of dirt. Just to see, it tastes like disappointment. But at least it doesn't bite back. Night falls, it falls fast here. Like a curtain. Or a punishment, you lie down on a bed of straw, cloth, and doubt. You dream of warmth. Of being full. Of not waking up with your toes missing. You hear wolves in the distance. Or maybe it's just wind. Either way, you don't move. The moon looks judgmental. You ignore it. You whisper a half prayer into the dark. Not to God, necessarily, just to something. Anything, and then you sleep, hungry, cold, and wrapped in history's sharpest lesson. Exploration is mostly suffering dressed up in good intentions. You wake up coughing. Again. The inside of your nose is frozen. Your breath floats before you like a ghost too lazy to haunt. The straw beneath you has turned to slush, and someone nearby has definitely wet themselves in the night. You don't mention it. No one does. Embarrassment is a luxury you traded away the first time you had to dig a latrine with your hands. Outside, there's light. Not sunshine, just a grim, gray suggestion of morning. You pull yourself up slowly. Your knees crack like old floorboards. Your fingers bend like thawing branches. You're alive. Somehow, you find a pot in the coals. There's something inside it. Thin. Pungent. The smell is not terrible. Not good either. It might be boiled rat. No one says. You take a sip. It burns your tongue, which is a surprise, because for the first time in days, something is warm. Someone mutters, that'll keep you standing. You nod. Grateful. Or obedient. You can't tell the difference anymore. Let's be honest, Jamestown wasn't a city. It was an idea people bled into mud. A desperate handful of ambition, ego, and royal paperwork thrown into a wilderness with no roof and too many teeth. London told you you'd be building churches and planting orchards. You're building fires and burying friends. Today's task is gathering wood. Again, you and 3 others trudge into the forest. It's less a walk and more a grim shuffle. The trees here look like they might bite back. Every creak is a threat. Every shadow feels sentient. You find some branches. Barely. Your hands sting as you snap them. Blood rises to the surface like sap. You don't even feel it anymore. Then, a rustle, you freeze. So does everyone else. Could be an animal. Could be a person. Could be neither. Or both. You grip your stick like a sword, which is funny, because you've never even held a real one. But you're ready to fight anyway. If it's your time to go, you'd at least like to go with a splinter in hand. It's a squirrel, you almost cry. Not out of fear. Just because it's alive, and fast, and whole. And you're not. Back at the fort, someone's shouting, the ships. The ships have been spotted, or so someone claims. Half the group limps toward the lookout. Nothing, just fog and water. You sit down on a barrel that smells like vinegar and mold. Your stomach growls again. You ignore it. A woman offers you a scrap of something. Maybe bread. Maybe bark. Maybe both. You chew, nod, say thank you like it means anything. Later, someone dies. You don't ask who. You just help wrap the body in whatever cloth is available. You've gotten good at not looking people in the eye. The burial is short. Quiet. No priest, just a shovel and a prayer muttered from memory. The ground is so hard, you end up stacking stones over the body instead. Historical whisper. Archaeologists have found hastily buried skeletons from Jamestown, some with signs of malnutrition, others with even darker marks. Cannibalism. Not metaphorical. Actual. Real. Because hunger doesn't care about morality, you go back to your hut. Sit. Stare. Someone starts a story, half a memory from England. Sheep. A woman in a red skirt. The smell of cinnamon. It's nonsense, but it's beautiful. You close your eyes and pretend it's your memory. 2. Dinner is ash soup, that's what you call it, anyway. Because it tastes like ash and feels like soup. You eat it anyway. Hunger doesn't argue. One boy claims he saw something green today. A sprout. A leaf. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was moss. No one believes him, but no one calls him a liar either. That would require energy. You return to your bed. If you can call it that. It's a pile of despair in linen's clothing. Someone snores. Someone else coughs blood. A rat scratches in the corner. You pull your shirt tighter around your shoulders and press your face into the wall. You remember your mother's hands. You don't remember her face. Just her hands. The moon is back. Still judgmental, but maybe, just maybe, it's also waiting, because there's a strange thing buried beneath all this mud and frost and desperation. Still breathing, still here, and somewhere, miles across the sea, someone is loading another ship. With food. With letters. With rumors. Spring will come, it has to. You wake up with a musket in your hand and snow in your boots. Welcome to Valley Forge. It's the winter of 1777, and you're a soldier in the Continental Army. Which is another way of saying, you are freezing, starving, and unpaid. Your tent is a miracle of bad engineering. It flaps even when there's no wind and leaks precisely onto your only dry sock. You sit up, bones aching like they've been negotiated by Congress, which, to be fair, they kind of have. Fact of the day, during the Revolutionary War, American soldiers often went months without pay, food, or even proper shoes. At Valley Forge, over 2,000 men died not from battle, but from exposure, starvation, and disease. You consider eating your belt. Again, it didn't help last week, but hope dies slower than flesh. You chew on a piece of jerky that could legally qualify as a roofing tile. It tastes like despair. Outside, someone sneezes. You whisper a prayer that it's not smallpox. Bless you, you add, just in case it helps. Someone else is reading aloud a letter from George Washington. Something about endurance and liberty, and hang in there. You don't dislike the man. He looks great on a horse. But his teeth are made of things no dentist would recommend. Your feet hurt. Not from walking, but from existing. You poke at the fire. It sulks. Your friend, James, sits beside you. He's carving a chess piece out of bone. You ask where he got the bone. He doesn't answer. You decide not to press. Historians still argue whether the suffering at Valley Forge forged unity or just thinned the herd. Was it noble sacrifice, or logistical incompetence? Probably both. History rarely picks one flavor. You get up, slowly. Your coat is more whole than cloth. Your hat is a repurposed potato sack, but still, you march, because you were told there was an idea here, an idea worth frostbite. You stumble through the snow. Someone yells drill. It's Baron von Steuben again. Shirt unbuttoned to the waist. Accent thick as maple syrup. He yells in French-accented German. Or maybe German-accented French, no one knows, but somehow, he's teaching you to turn, to shoot, to not immediately die in battle. This is your education now. not books. Not lectures, boots. Blood. Blisters. You do 20 turns and collapse face first into the snow, someone claps, you can't tell if it's sarcastic. At night, you write in your journal, "Dear Abigail, we have no bread. We have no blankets. But we have one another. Also, I think my foot has frozen into my sock. Please send rum." You draw a tiny bottle of rum next to the letter. It warms you slightly. Nearby, someone is writing poetry. You don't know how they have the energy for rhymes. But it's beautiful. Something about liberty blooming like frost flowers. You pretend to be asleep so you can listen. Suddenly, a commotion. Someone brought a potato, a real one, unboiled. Unsliced. Still with dirt on it. You all gather like it's a sermon. No one eats it yet, you just stare. It's the first thing you've seen in a week that looks like it might keep someone alive. Then the owner takes a bite. You weep quietly. There is a frostbite check. Someone loses a toe. You try not to look. Winter moves like molasses. Slow. Relentless. Sticky. You start naming your lice. One is called Thomas. He seems nice. As the snow begins to thaw, finally, you realize something terrifying. You're still here, somehow, against every natural instinct. You stayed. Spring returns with a whisper. You emerge from your tent like a moth from a coat pocket. You're thinner. Angrier. Stranger, but you're still holding your musket, still ready to believe that this frozen misery might become something more, freedom, maybe. You cough into your sleeve. The snow's gone, but the damp hasn't. It clings to everything, your bones, your wool, your mood. It's April now, which means mud instead of frostbite and gnats instead of icicles. Your coat still smells like old smoke and defeat. But your fingers move again. That's something. James wakes with a grunt. He slept with his boots on. You suspect it's because his toes are scared of the night. He mutters something about eggs. You both laugh. You haven't seen an egg in 5 months. Breakfast is something the quartermaster calls gruel, which is generous. It's hot water with ambition. You eat it anyway. The steam feels like kindness. Von Steuben calls another drill. You groan. He yells. You groan again, but you march, and somehow, something feels different now. It's not your shoes, they're still suicidal strips of leather, but the rhythm. The way everyone moves in time. Not just because they're yelled at, but because they finally know how. Someone fires their musket on cue, someone reloads without dropping their powder. You realize, you're becoming a soldier. Not just a man who limped into camp with hope and frostbite. But someone who might stand in a line and not run. That's power. Or madness. Hard to say. A letter arrives, not for you. For James. He reads it under his breath, lips shaping each word like it's something alive. You glance over. It's from his wife. There's a drawing of a cow in the corner. You both stare at the cow for a long time. You miss cows. And wives. And corners. Then the strangest thing happens. A wagon arrives, with real bread, warm. You don't believe it until you touch it, soft, steaming, kissed by yeast and sorcery. It's passed down the line. Hands tremble. You eat slowly. A chunk the size of your thumb tastes like church and birthdays. That night, there's music. Someone has a fiddle. Another has a spoon. You have nothing, but you hum along, a tune about the river. A tune about leaving. A tune about coming back. You sway. You clap. You forget for 3 full minutes that you're sleeping in a puddle with a man named after cheese. Fact drop. Valley Forge wasn't a battle. It was a crucible. The army that entered that winter was barely an army. The one that left, ragged, yes, but trained, was a new creature. Washington gambled on time. On discipline. On belief, and for some ungodly reason. It worked. You volunteer for a scouting party the next morning, not because you're brave. Because you want to see trees again. Not the stunted, broken ones near camp, but real trees. Green ones. The kind that don't groan when the wind touches them. You hike into the woods with 5 others. Silence hangs heavy. Birds break it now and then. The air smells like damp hope. You see a rabbit, no one shoots, you all just look. The rabbit twitches, then bolts. You smile. A mile later, you find a creek. Clear. Cold. Not cursed by winter or piss. You drink like it's holy. Maybe it is. You return with firewood and wild onions. Actual onions. You hand them to the cook. He weeps. Quietly. Behind the soup barrel, word spreads, the French might come, not into camp, but into the war. Real ships. Real help. Lafayette's name is spoken like a charm. You've never met a Frenchman, but you're ready to build him a throne made of potatoes if it means fewer British and more boots. Someone carves a wooden eagle. It sits near the fire, wings outstretched. You all stare at it as though it might fly away and summon justice. A preacher comes through camp. He talks of liberty and righteousness. But mostly, he hands out soap. You love him instantly. You scrub until your skin is pink. You smell like a person. You smell like maybe you'll survive. Von Steuben comes by. He corrects your posture. He nods. It's the closest thing to affection you've seen from him. He mutters something about discipline through dignity. You write it in your journal. You don't know what it means yet, but it feels real. Then the call, move out. You pack your musket. Your coat. Your one remaining spoon. James gives you a pine cone. For luck, he says. It's stupid. It's perfect. You march out of Valley Forge with 10,000 others. No band. No trumpets, just boots. Mud. Breath, but you're different now, not whole. Not healed, but welded. Tempered. Washington rides past. He looks like a statue made of smoke and steel. He nods, you nod back. Somewhere ahead, there's battle, and maybe freedom, and maybe death, but also maybe a nation. You march. The biscuits could break your teeth. Hardtack, they called it. Flour, water, and time. Lots of time. So much that it fossilized into something you could use to defend yourself if needed. It's the American Civil War, and you're on the Union side. Not that it makes much difference to your stomach. Your uniform itches in places you can't name. Your boots are soaked. Always soaked. You're not sure if you still have toenails. You wake up next to a rifle, 2 snoring men, and something that may or may not be a possum. It's dark. It's always dark, unless it's either burning or thundering. You step outside your tent and squint. Mud. Again. The same mud. It's following you. Historical fact, Civil War camps were notorious for their lack of sanitation. More soldiers died from disease than combat. Dysentery, typhoid, and plain old bad luck were often more lethal than bullets. You smell bacon and wonder if you're hallucinating. Probably. Someone's burning a boot for warmth. Again, the cook tosses you a piece of salt pork the size of a thumb. It smells like yesterday's regrets. You chew slowly. You need the calories. And the illusion of flavor. A nearby drummer boy is tapping a rhythm. It's cheerful. Too cheerful. You consider throwing your hardtack at him. Instead, you trudge to formation. Your sergeant looks like he hasn't slept since Lincoln got elected. He shouts. You nod. Everything hurts. There's a joke going around camp. If the South doesn't kill us, the beans will. You chuckle. Then your stomach growls in betrayal. Academic debate. Historians still argue about whether the soldiers' poor nutrition was due to supply chain failures or a basic underestimation of what thousands of hungry young men would consume in a week. Some believe it was deliberate rationing to avoid rebellion. Others say it was just incompetence. You break open your hardtack and find a worm. You name him George. George is better company than most of your platoon. Someone nearby starts singing a hymn. Then another voice joins. Then another. You all hum along, low and tired. It's not harmonious. But it's human. Later that day, there's a skirmish. The bullets don't scare you as much as the screaming. That's always worse. Louder. Closer. You survive, mostly. Your friend Eli doesn't. He gets buried behind the latrine. Someone carves his name into bark. Misspells it. You say nothing. The next night, you write home, "Dearest Clara, the war is long, the food short. I miss your pie more than anything. Well, almost anything. I miss your voice more. Tell Sarah to pray for rain, or better boots. Preferably both. You're George." You put it in an envelope still stained with coffee. No stamp. No one's checking. You dream that night, of home, of warm bread, of not needing to count calories because there are too many to count. You wake to cannon fire. Breakfast is cold beans and bitter memories. The officer reads an order, "Move south." Again, you sigh. Your socks are holes pretending to be fabric. You shoulder your pack and start walking. The line of soldiers ahead of you sways like a tired snake. You grip your rifle, pat your chest for George the Worm, and march. A dog barks somewhere. Probably Union. Possibly Confederate. Maybe just a dog trying to stay alive. You get rained on, then you get sunburned, then it rained on again. The sky can't make up its mind, just like Congress. The battle you're walking toward doesn't have a name yet. But it will. Some hills. Some creek. Some crossroads. They always get named. Usually by the survivors. You plan to be one, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'll eat something warm. The cook promised beans with lard, but all you got was something gray and gelatinous, probably pretending to be both. You poke it with your spoon, just to be sure it's dead. It wobbles ominously but doesn't fight back. Good enough. You sit on a rock, boots steaming from the morning sun evaporating last night's storm. The mud has decided to impersonate a blanket, coating everything with heavy indifference. You've stopped caring what gets dirty. Everything is dirty. The inside of your ears. Your soul. Definitely your socks. Across the clearing, someone is shaving with a broken mirror and a knife that's seen too much. He hums something. You recognize it, but only in your bones. Everything familiar now is a blur. Like home has been dragged through a war and left to dry on a barbed fence. A corporal drops beside you, mouth full of pipe smoke and rumors. They say the Rebs got boots, he says. You raise an eyebrow. Real ones? He nods. With laces and everything. You chew your sad beans. Sounds like propaganda. He laughs. So's everything these days. You nod. Truth and lies sleep in the same tent out here. Both snore. Both stink. You'd shoot either if they stole your hardtack. Around noon, you're ordered to dig, not for fun. Not for defense. Graves. You hate how routine it is now, how your hands go through the motions like they're harvesting something invisible. You dig in silence. Next to another man who's humming that same tune again. You don't ask his name. You stopped asking last month. The ground is soft. That makes it worse. By evening, there are clouds again, the kind that make promises the sky never keeps. You get shelter under what used to be a wagon tarp. You share it with two others, a sleeping rifle, and one moldy can of peaches someone traded for a button, a favor, and half a lie. The peaches are divine. You all eat them in silence, slow, reverent. It's the first sweet thing you've tasted in weeks. Happy birthday, someone mutters. it's nobody's birthday, you laugh anyway, then the letter courier shows up. Thin. Mud-covered. Always somehow dry in the eyes, like he's made of ash, he hands you an envelope. It's addressed in a hand you know better than your own, Clara. You take it gently. As if it might break, you don't read it right away, you wait until the fire's low and the snoring starts, then, under the dim flicker of embers, you unfold the page. She writes about the corn harvest. About how Sarah scraped her knee falling from a hay bale. About how the dog, Rufus, still waits for you by the porch every evening. You don't cry, not because you're strong, because you're too tired. You trace her name with your thumb. She drew a little flower next to it. It's crude. Crooked. Perfect. You tuck it into your shirt like a second heart. Someone coughs in their sleep. You doze with your hand on your rifle. In your dream, there's thunder, but it's just a man snoring too loud. When dawn breaks, the orders come, move at first light. You rise, creaking like a barn door in January. Your shoulders protest. Your spine threatens mutiny, but you pack. You always pack. You wrap Clara's letter in oilcloth and place it in your inner pocket, next to George the Worm, who is, miraculously, still alive. The march begins with boots slapping mud like a slow drumbeat, 1 foot. Then another. You pass a small town, what's left of it, anyway, broken fences. Burnt chimneys. A doll's leg stuck in a tree. You wonder who used to live here. You wonder if they still live anywhere. Then a whistle, then the first shot. You dive behind a low wall. Your heart taps out a Morse code of panic. You return fire. You don't aim. You just point and pray. The smoke builds fast. You cough. You reload. Your hands are automatic. Everything is. You think of peaches. You think of home. You think of Clara's crooked flower. Someone screams. A real scream. The kind that makes angels look away. You don't know how long it lasts. When it's over, the sky is back to pretending nothing happened. You look down and realize your hands are shaking. You tell them to stop. They don't listen. You crawl to a tree stump and sit. James, or maybe it's Henry, limps past, holding his own arm like a parcel. Still got your toes? He asks. You nod. I think. Then you're lucky, he says. You watch him disappear into the trees. That night, you clean your rifle like it's a ritual. You whisper to it. You thank it. You apologize. You write to Clara. You tell her nothing. You tell her everything. You say, today we saw a town that used to smile. I still remember how yours looked. You sign it with your name and something that might be hope. Then you fall asleep holding the letter like it's a compass. And you dream, of real food, of warm hands, of biscuits that don't break bones. You've crossed oceans, eaten salt pork, rat stew, and something that might have once been a sock. You've been a Roman centurion, a plague doctor, a trench-footed doughboy. Now, it's the 21st century. You're in a museum, and you're hungry again. You wander past exhibits, rusted helmets, cracked canteens, a menu from a Cold War submarine that lists reconstituted egg product as a daily option. You wince. A little boy in a neon shirt is tapping on the glass. He points at a ration pack. Labeled meal, ready to eat. He giggles. He has no idea. In fact, modern MREs include everything from beef stew to peanut butter to flameless heating pads. They are engineered not just for sustenance, but morale. They last for decades and taste like hope with a shelf life. You remember the Civil War beans, the World War II spam, the Roman garum, the hardtack. Oh, the hardtack. You move on to a section labeled the soldier's table. There's a display of mess kits. They shine under the lights, but you know better. Those little compartments are not for flavor separation. They are for despair distribution. A placard describes how military meals shaped entire cultures. There's a debate about whether the invention of canned food prolonged World War I. Some historians argue that it allowed supply lines to extend too far, too fast. Others say it saved lives by preventing scurvy and starvation. You stare at a photo of a Marine eating spaghetti out of a plastic pouch on a mountaintop. You feel oddly proud. There's something absurdly human about it, risking your life for an idea and still demanding tomato sauce with your noodles. You sit on a bench. The museum hums softly, like the inside of a submarine. You take out a granola bar, modern. Tasty. Crunchy. You feel guilty. You chew anyway. Nearby, a video screen plays old newsreel footage, soldiers dancing. Soldiers smoking. Soldiers sleeping with helmets for pillows and rifles for dreams. You remember the faces. Not names. Just faces. Some were fictional, some were real, all of them were hungry. You close your eyes for a moment. In the darkness behind your lids, you hear the clatter of tin cups, the crack of campfires, the slosh of trench mud. The distant buzz of a fan that sounds like the wind through a tent flap, and in that moment, you are every soldier who has ever sat down to a meal and wondered if it might be their last. Or worse, their best. You breathe in, slow, soft, still. The museum smell is part dust, part disinfectant, and part memory. You swear there's even a faint scent of boiled cabbage trailing from the Cold War wing. You stand up and move to the next exhibit, the future of feeding the front. It's sleek. Stainless steel. A display case with prototypes, algae protein bars, cricket jerky, lab-grown meat cubes in vacuum-sealed silver. The placard promises they're nutritionally optimized, environmentally sustainable, psychologically engineered. You stare at a cube labeled terabyte, steak flavor. It looks like something a bored alien might eat during a break from probing Earth. A kid asks his mom, do soldiers really eat bugs? His mom shrugs. Sometimes. He makes a face like the word broccoli just slapped him. You smile. Because bugs aren't the weirdest thing you've ever eaten, not by a long shot. At least bugs have protein. You once had to pretend tree bark was broth. And once, in a trench, you swore the beans were whispering. Across the hall, there's a glass case titled Comfort Rations, Food from Home. There are letters. Cookies wrapped in tin foil. Photographs stained with soup. A single red-labeled bottle of sriracha, half empty. You're not sure whether to laugh or salute it. In the corner, there's a video playing. Grainy footage from Vietnam, soldiers crouched under ponchos, rain hammering the jungle around them, tearing open ration packs with teeth. One man grins at the camera, waves a packet labeled ham and lima beans and yells, "This'll kill you faster than Charlie." You wince. Everyone hated the ham and limas. Some said it was a secret form of psychological warfare. You walk past a mock-up of a field kitchen. A real one. With burners, ladles, dented pots. It smells faintly of iron and nostalgia. A recorded voice plays overhead, reading from a diary, June 14, 1944. We had stew tonight. Real meat. Not much, but enough to remember home. Jenkins cried into his cup. Said it tasted like Sunday. You touch the edge of the counter. The metal is cold. It feels like something sacred, because in the middle of chaos, flames, screams, distant explosions, someone still cared enough to make stew. Next to the kitchen is a quote etched into the wall in blocky serif font, "An army marches on its stomach." Napoleon Bonaparte, you scoff. Of course he said that. He never had to chew through leather. Still, he had a point. You keep walking. Now you're in a quieter room, dim lights. Soft piano music. The walls are lined with displays of handwritten menus. Thanksgiving dinners at forward operating bases. Christmas Eve meals in submarines. Birthday cakes baked in mess tins over kerosene flames. You stop at one, Camp Taji, Iraq. July 4, 2006. It lists, barbecue chicken. Canned corn. Ice cream bars. A note at the bottom, we played country music and someone wore a foam Statue of Liberty crown. You close your eyes and imagine it. Heat. Sand. Laughter forced through exhaustion. Even then, there was celebration. Because food isn't just food. It's a ritual. Refuge. The one human indulgence war hasn't figured out how to ruin completely. In the center of the room is a sculpture. It's abstract, twisted metal and charred wood forming a kind of table. Around it, empty bowls. Rusted utensils. One pristine ceramic plate, untouched. A plaque reads, "For those who never came home to eat again." You sit, just for a moment, and in the silence, you remember, not the battles, not the weapons, the meals, the sound of a spoon scraping the bottom of a tin cup. The warm bite of stolen jam. The hiss of something frying in a stolen pan. The groan of opening a can you already know will disappoint you. The soft crunch of a granola bar eaten in peace, the taste of survival. You remember George, the Civil War worm. You hope he lived a full life. You remember the rat named Elias in Salem. And the tea that tasted like smoke and desperation in a World War I dugout. You remember the biscuit you smuggled into the Versailles garden. And the soup ladled by a Russian woman who never smiled. Food wasn't just calories, it was witness, it was the thread that tied you to time, to history, to yourself. You open your bag and pull out what's left of your granola bar. You break it in half, you leave one piece on the bench beside you, just in case someone, somewhere, still hungry from the past, decides to sit next to you. You whisper, "Bon appetit." And keep walking, the museum fades behind your eyes, the lights dim, like candles in the fog. You feel the weight of centuries settling into the folds of your blanket. Roman sandals, muddy boots, scorched leather soles, they line the path behind you like footprints in dust. There is no battle cry now, only the rustle of leaves outside your window, the hush of wind past the eaves, the thrum of memory softening at the edges. You stretch your fingers, feeling warmth return to them. No frostbite. No trench rot. No lice named Thomas, just you, and the quiet comfort of knowing how far we've come. That food is no longer moldy bread or squirrel soup. That history, no matter how bitter, has seasons that pass. You turn onto your side, the pillow cradles your head like a snowless field. In your half-sleep, a voice whispers, "Don't forget the sardine chocolate bars." You smile, the soldiers of the past fade gently into dream, their laughter, their letters, their boot-scraped songs. You are safe, you are home, and for tonight, you can rest, have sweet dreams.